Chapter 13:27. The sun was shining brightly. Chu Li had just returned to the small house in the spirit medicine nursery when Du Ying came over to inform him that someone from the Plain Maiden Palace had arrived and wanted to spar with him. Du Ying led the way while Chu Li followed behind her. The two of them were silent and did not say a word. Chu Li coughed softly to break the silence. "Senior Sister Du, how many people have arrived?" Du Ying sighed in relief and answered, "Two." "Only two." Chu Li's voice was filled with disappointment. Du Ying answered, "It's Master's junior uncle to Lady May and the others." Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. Although age and martial arts were not necessarily related, in most cases, the older one's cultivation level would be higher. The previous generation of disciples from the Plain Maiden Palace were definitely not mediocre. After that, the awkward atmosphere between the two was broken. Chu Li casually asked for some information. "Is Li Xinghe here? He just arrived. He seemed to be in a hurry and didn't look too good. He wants to see you, junior brother." "He wants to see me?" Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Li Xinghe was smart and must have suspected him. Unfortunately, Chu Li had set up a cover and purposely got injured. Both of them fluttered and arrived outside the Divine Light Basilica in the time it took to exchange a few words. Du Ying led him into the basilica. In the basilica, other than Sun Mingyue, the four ladies, and Li Xinghe who were sitting behind the table, there were also two beautiful women who sat quietly and elegantly in the armchairs. Every frown and smile of theirs was charming. One of them had an oval face that was as delicate as snow. She had faint dimples when she smiled, looking gentle and amiable. The other woman had an oval face with almond eyes and peach cheeks. However, she looked indifferent and did not like to talk. "Saint." Chu Li closed fist saluted. Sun Mingyue waved her hand. "These two are Xiao and Xia Xiao from the Plain Maiden Palace. Senior Xia, this is our priest, Zhao De." Chu Li closed fist saluted the two beautiful women. Zhao De greets the two seniors. "You flatter me." The two women glanced at him and the gentlewoman chuckled. "I heard that you defeated Mei Chun and the others. Priest Zhao?" Chu Li smiled and nodded. "I won by a stroke and a half. To be able to defeat Mei Chun and the others, you're indeed a priest of the Holy Church." The gentlewoman nodded. "The Holy Church of Light really has many hidden talents." "Senior Xiao is too kind," Sun Mingyue said. Xiao said, "Both guardian kings are so young. This is a sign of prosperity. How can we not celebrate?" Sun Mingyue shook her head with a smile. Xiao said, "How about this? I'll exchange a few moves with Zhao Fuwang and experience the great light sword technique." "Senior Xiao." Sun Mingyue shook her head and said, "Forget it." Mei Chun also shook her head. "Martial uncle, let's listen to the saintess." Xiao turned to look at Mei Chun. Mei Chun shook her head lightly. Xiao burst into laughter. "Are you saying that I'm not his opponent?" "Yes." Mei Chun nodded helplessly. Xiao giggled like a silver bell floating in the air, pleasing to the ear. Xia Xiao, who had been wearing a cold expression, shook her head and said, "Little Chun, you know what you're talking about." Mei Chun sighed softly and remained silent. She knew that it was useless to say anything more. They had exchanged blows with Chu Li and received pointers from the two masters' uncles, so they knew the ins and outs of both of them. In terms of sword techniques, the two masters' uncles were not Zhao De's match. Even if they attacked together, they might not be able to defeat him. Xiao smiled sweetly. "This time, I really want to experience it. His sword technique must be peerlessly exquisite for little Chun to be so convinced." "My hands are itching, come." Li Xinghe quickly said, "Senior Xia, please wait." He had changed into a blue tunic and looked refreshed. His injury was on his left arm, which was hidden by the loose clothing. Xiao glared at him in dissatisfaction. Li Xinghe quickly said with a smile, "From what I know, Brother Zhao is injured." "Oh?" Xiao looked at Chu Li in surprise and sized him up. She smiled. "I couldn't tell." Chu Li said, "Thank you for your concern, young Master Li. I've been channeling to heal my injury, and I'm fully recovered now." Li Xinghe smiled. "Brother Zhao, you mustn't force yourself. It'll be disrespectful to Senior Xia if you fight while you're injured." Xiao nodded. "There's no need for that." Chu Li grinned. Why don't you come take a look, young Master Li? Sure. Li Xinghe approached him without hesitation and reached out to grab Chu Li's wrist. Chu Li activated the divine light technique, and his inner energy surged like a river. He turned his wrist and clenched it into a fist. Li Xinghe quickly changed his fingers into a palm and activated the minor star palm energy. Bam! Their clothes fluttered as if a strong gale had arrived. A wave of domineering inner force entered his wrist and surged violently, trying to enter his meridians. The little star palm force resisted with all its might, but this wave of inner force was endless, as though it was endless. Chu Li put his fist and palm together and stood still. Only his clothes were fluttering as he began to compete with his inner energy. The domineering inner energy slowly pushed forward inch by inch. It was slow but determined and unstoppable. It slowly moved from his wrist to his elbow, then to his shoulder, and was about to reach his internal organs. Chu Li suddenly loosened his fist and took a step back. He asked with a faint smile, "Young Master Li, am I injured?" Li Xinghe secretly sighed in relief. He would have been injured if he had been any slower. He smiled. "It's healed as expected. Looks like it was just a small injury." Chu Li shook his head. "I'm flattered that young Master Li is so concerned about me." He looked at Xiao. "Senior Xiao, please. Watch my sword." The long sword at Xiao's waist turned into a stream of light as she became one with her sword. Before the white shadow in the air disappeared, the tip of her sword had already pierced Chu Li's chest. A brilliant light rose from Chu Li's waist. It was as dazzling as a blazing sun that had fallen upon them. They could not open their eyes. Ding, 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 ding. The crowd could only hear a few clear sounds as the blazing sun suddenly dissipated. The crowd was momentarily blinded. When they opened their eyes again, Chu Li had already taken a step back and sheathed his long sword. Xiao's sword was also sheathed. What a divine light sword technique. Xiao stared at Chu Li and scoffed. "You held back, didn't you?" Chu Li smiled. "Senior Xiao's swordsmanship is outstanding. How would I dare to hold back?" Cunning." Xiao rolled her eyes at him and scoffed. "A win is a win, a loss is a loss. It's true that your swordsmanship is outstanding. I can't compare." Chu Li smiled and shook his head. Xiao frowned at him. "Divine light sword technique?" She looked at Sun Mingwei. "Is your divine light sword technique that powerful?" Sun Mingwei replied, "I'm not an expert in swordsmanship, but the divine light sword technique is indeed powerful. It's not inferior to the divine light fist. I've really underestimated the Holy Church of Light." Xiao shook her head. Sun Mingwei said calmly, "However, the divine light sword technique is difficult to cultivate. Very few people practice it. Zhao Fuwang is a genius. That's why he managed to cultivate this sword technique. Such a genius is indeed rare. Unfortunately, we're the Plain Maiden Palace. We don't accept male disciples. Otherwise, we'd really want to recruit Zhao Fuwang." Xiao smiled sweetly. "However, we can't stop the Church of the Divine Blood's revenge. How many disciples do you have above 100 years old?" 52, Sun Mingwei replied. Chapter 1328. Sun Mingwei shook her head and said, "It's nothing compared to the Plain Maiden Palace. We don't have as many as you." Xiao shook her head and said, "It's hard to find a disciple. The requirement for talent is too high." Li Xinghe said, "More than 50 of them are enough to stop the experts of the Divine Blood Church." Sun Mingwei glanced at him and said nothing. Lu Chenyu scoffed. "Does young Master Li not know the rules? Unless it's a matter of life and death, grandmasters over 100 years old are not allowed to intervene. Isn't this a matter of life and death?" Li Xinghe smiled. Lu Chenyu said, "The disciples who are over 100 years old are only responsible for guarding the peak. They will not leave the Great Light Peak on their own accord. I don't believe that you haven't sent disciples over 100 years old." Li Xinghe shook his head and laughed. "Don't lie before a true master. Young Master Li, we always abide by the rules." Sun Mingwei said faintly, "If we send out 100-year-old elite, there will be endless trouble in the future. It's best if we don't send them out if we can." Li Xinghe smiled and said, "Saintess, you are far-sighted to be thinking about the future. In my opinion, you should first get through this hurdle before you. 100 years old was an important juncture for people in the martial arts world. Practicing beyond 100 years old required the coordination of one's state of mind. Once one's state of mind was broken, one's martial arts would not improve, but instead regress. Experts over 100 years old were the greatest strength of a sect. Once a 100-year-old expert broke their mental state, their strength would be greatly reduced, and the consequences would be unpredictable. This was also the reason why the 100-year-old experts did not get involved in the grudges of the martial arts world. Moreover, once they sent out the 100-year-old experts, the other party would inevitably move out as well. In this way, the matter would become bigger and bigger, and it would easily damage the vitality of the sect and shake the foundation of the sect. Thus, there was this unspoken rule that would not be broken unless it was absolutely necessary. Chu Li said, "This time, you must have sent out a 100-year-old master to deal with the Church of the Divine Blood?" "Of course." Li Xinghe nodded and said, "There are at least 100-year-old experts in the Divine Blood Church. We won't be able to shake them if we don't make a move. It'll be difficult to attract too many experts from the Divine Blood Church if you don't send out your 100-year-old experts. Different situations call for different actions. Let's see how many people they have," Sun Mingyue said calmly. Li Xinghe said, "Saintus, we can't let them escape like last time. Last time, we wanted to lure more experts over." Sun Mingyue said faintly, "Just don't let them escape this time." The tip of his sword instantly reached Xia Rou's chest, intending to break her sword. "Good eyesight," Xia Rou praised. Her sword trembled and let out a soft buzz before it hit Chu Li's blade. Ding! The two swords collided with each other, and a clear sound lingered in the air. Chu Li's body floated up. His feet left the ground, and he took a few steps in the air. He dispelled the force on the sword. Instead of retreating, he advanced. It was as if there was a rope in front of him that was suddenly pulled back. He suddenly thrust his sword towards Xia Rou, and the tip of his sword instantly reached her chest. Suddenly, a clear light appeared in front of Xia Rou like a waterfall hanging in front of her. Ding, 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 ding. A series of clear sounds were like rain hitting banana leaves. In an instant, more than 20 swords were exchanged. Mei Chun and the other 3 women and Xia Xiao stared at the two of them with bright eyes. Chu Li had restrained them with just a few moves, so they felt that Chu Li's sword was extremely fast. He used speed to suppress all subtleties, forcing them to be unable to use their exquisite moves. As such, they could not help but admire Chu Li's swords. Every sword move was exquisite. They were dazzled and had goosebumps. They wanted to scream out loud. Xia Rou displayed an even more exquisite sword technique. Because it was a spar, Chu Li did not kill her. He also countered with exquisite sword techniques, displaying the exquisite divine light sword technique to its fullest. The two of them were evenly matched. Xia Rou was even more impressed. Although she looked young, she was already in her 40s. She had been cultivating in the sect since young and had a very solid foundation. She was also gifted in swordsmanship, which was why she had her current cultivation level. She sighed to herself. The understanding of swordsmanship required sufficient wisdom and experience. She did not expect him to have such a deep understanding of swordsmanship at such a young age. He was even a level deeper than her. When she sparred with him, her understanding of swordsmanship deepened, and she benefited a lot. Someone else. She suddenly floated backward and retreated from the battle. Her beautiful face was flushed, making her even more beautiful. She turned her head and smiled. "Mei Chun, you spar with Zhao Fuwang. I'm no match for him." Mei Chun smiled. "That's great." Xiao Rou smiled. "Zhao Fuwang sai, I'll call you young Zhao. Go easy on her and limit it to 100 moves. How about that?" "All right." Chu Li smiled. Mei Chun gracefully stepped forward and closed fist saluted. She smiled gently. "Young Master Zhao, please advise me." "Please." Chu Li held his sword horizontally in front of his chest. Swoosh! Mei Chun's sword flashed. It was extremely fast. Chu Li's sword turned into a circle of light and pulled. Mei Chun's sword shifted to the side, and her body moved forward. Chu Li took the opportunity to stab at her throat. Mei Chun's slender waist twisted abruptly like a python turning over its body. She forcefully placed her sword in front of her and blocked Chu Li's sword. Ding! The two swords clashed. She realized that the force on the sword was very weak. He did not use much force and was purely relying on the exquisite swordsmanship. She pursed her cherry lips, and one move after another enveloped Chu Li. Chapter 13:29. Chu Li exchanged more than 100 blows with her and finally stopped. Mei Chun pursed her red lips and did not say a word. She seemed to be deep in thought, as if she had learned something. Mei Xia, you too, 100 blows. Xiao Rou smiled and said, Xiao Zhao, I'll have to trouble you to guide them, lest they become too arrogant and lose face for the plain girl palace in the future. Chu Li smiled and nodded. He wanted to experience the plain maiden palace's swordsmanship. The plain maiden sword technique was exquisite and far superior to the swordsmanship he had learned before. It was not by luck that the plain maiden palace was able to stand proudly as one of the 8 major sections. He had learned the less ultimate sword from the ultimate temple. It was a powerful swordsmanship, but it was slightly inferior to the plain maiden sword technique. He was different from others. It was useless even if others could see the exquisite swordsmanship. Without the accompanying heart technique, the power of the swordsmanship could not be unleashed. However, Chu Li could see through their channeling route, so he could completely learn the plain maiden sword technique and understand its wonders. Although he could not unleash it, he could integrate it into his swordsmanship. Young Zhao, we can't let you work for nothing. Xiao Rou smiled. How about we give you 2 sets of sword manuals? Sword manuals? Chu Li was surprised. Xiao Rou smiled. The plain maiden palace has many sword manuals. You can use them to comprehend the palace's swordsmanship. They are all excellent swordsmanship. As she spoke, she took out 2 thin booklets and passed them to Chu Li. Chu Li was surprised and hesitated to reach out. Take it. Xiao Rou passed it to him and smiled. Don't think that it's a bad swordsmanship just because I have it with me. Take a look. Chu Li reached out and took it. It was still warm and gave off a faint fragrance. He looked down and flipped through one of them. It was the flaming sun sword technique, and the other one was the spirit ape sword technique. Xiao Rou said, These 2 are swordsmanship passed down from ancient times. The moves are simple but powerful. It's a shame that such swordsmanship is hard to comprehend and requires a high level of comprehension. I've studied it for 2 years, but I can't comprehend much. You could try. Chu Li Fis saluted and said seriously, Thank you, Senior Xia. Xiao Rou pursed her lips and smiled. No need to thank me. We benefited a lot from you too. Chu Li nodded slowly. No matter how stupid he was, he could tell that Xiao Rou was trying to recruit him. The plain maiden palace only accepted female disciples and didn't accept male disciples. Why did she recruit him like this? Could it be that she thinks highly of me, so she wants to cultivate a relationship with me so that she can ask me to help the plain maiden palace in the future? As one of the 8 great sects, the plain girl palace had a strong foundation. It did not need the help of a martial artist from the Great Li dynasty. Then why was he so close to her? He shook his head. In the end, he still could not figure out the reason. Xiao Rou had a precious weapon on her that could block the prying eyes, and so could Xia Xiao. However, Mei Chun and the other 3 girls did not have any precious weapons, so they could see the mental cultivation method of the plain maiden sword art from them. Unfortunately, they were also a bit confused and did not know Xiao Rou's intentions. After that, Chu Li sparred with Mei Xia, Mei Qiu, and Mei Dong one by one. The 4 women remained calm and collected, but they were full of praise in their hearts. Their complexions became much better. Although they weren't passionate enough, they were still very gentle and talkative. Xiao Rou raised her head and looked at the sky. It was already sunset. She smiled and said, Xiao Zhao, why don't you stay here? There are many houses here. Chu Li was stunned. He quickly shook his head and smiled. Senior Xia, that's not appropriate. What's inappropriate about it? Xiao Rou chuckled. You're still guarding against the rules between men and women. Don't worry, the reputation of the plain girl palace won't be tarnished. Or is it that you have a sweetheart and you're afraid that she'll be angry? Chu Li shook his head. That's not it. Then, do you really have a sweetheart? No, you don't have a woman? Xiaoro smiled and shook her head. The women from the Holy Church of Light really have high standards. Chu smiled. I'm too ugly. It's scary. Hee. Xiaoro giggled and shook her head. As a man, ability comes first. It doesn't matter if you're ugly or handsome. Stay here and we'll study those 2 sword manuals. I'm sure you'll be able to comprehend them faster than me. This. Chu Li hesitated. He was also very interested in those 2 sword manuals. Ancient sword techniques were indeed worth studying. It's settled then. I'll tell the saint. Xiaoro smiled. Chu Li nodded helplessly. Young Chun, help young Zhao choose a room, Xiaoro said. Mei Chun replied, Yes, young Master Zhao, please follow me. She was the first to walk out. Her graceful figure was light and swift, and her movements were graceful with an inexplicable rhythm. Chu Li Fizz saluted and bid farewell to the ladies. He followed Mei Chun out of the basilica and headed west. The setting sun shone on her as Mei Chun walked quietly without saying a word. Chu Li coughed softly. Thank you, Miss Mei. Mei Chun calmly said, We should be thanking you. We've gained a lot this time, and now we know that there's always someone better than you. They were all extremely talented people who were already grandmasters at a young age. Even in the martial arts world of the Fu dynasty, they were a group of top-notch people. Initially, they thought that the martial arts world of the Li dynasty was mediocre and did not take them seriously. Because of this, after witnessing Chu Li's swordsmanship, they felt even more strongly after being defeated. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. My martial arts skills are far from the saints. Mei Chun said, The saintess has received the inheritance of enlightenment. There is only one person like the saintess in the Great Li dynasty. She is different from ordinary people. You can't compare yourself to her, but you don't have to either. Your current level of cultivation is already extremely shocking. Chu Li smiled. Senior Xia is so close to me. Is it because my cultivation level is high? I'm flattered. It's because your cultivation level is high, Mei Chun said. Master's Junior Xiaoro is a person who loves talented people. She likes young talents the most. Chu Li nodded. I see. Mei Chun turned to look at him. Chu Li was puzzled. Mei Chun shook her head and did not say anything else. She brought him to an exquisite courtyard. The courtyard had been cleaned and the bedding was ready. They could move in right away. The basilica was brightly lit as if it was daytime. Xiaoro sat by the stone table in the basilica and gently put down her teacup. She smiled and said, Which one of you likes young Zhao? Mei Chun and the other 3 ladies stood in front of Xiaoro in silence. They were of the same height and looked almost the same. It was difficult to tell who was who when they stood together. Xia Xiao sat opposite Xiaoro and put down her teacup. She shook her head. Junior sister, stop fooling around. Xiaoro chuckled. You guys aren't tempted by such a handsome man. What a pity. Although young Zhao's cultivation level is profound and his swordsmanship is outstanding, he's still lacking in looks. It's no wonder they aren't tempted, Xia Xiao said. Xiaoro nodded. All right, I won't force it. I'll bring him around the palace and see which disciple likes him. You're determined to make him our plain maiden palace's son-in-law, Xia Xiao said with a smile. Xiaoro said, How can I let such a powerful person go? You can't force it. Don't mess around, Xia Xiao said. Xiaoro nodded. Of course, I can't make a pair of enemies. However, I think there'll be people who like young Zhao. He's not handsome, but very manly. Xia Xiao said, You'll only feel it after spending some time with him. We've made the right choice this time. Our biggest gain is this young Zhao, Xiaoro exclaimed. Chapter 1330. No matter how good he is, he's still a priest of the Holy Church of Light. He's not a disciple of the plain maiden palace. Don't get your hopes up. Xia Xiao shook his head and said, However, his talent in swordsmanship is indeed amazing. It makes people sigh at their inferiority. He shouldn't have come to the Holy Church of Light. He should have gone to the ultimate temple. Sigh, if only I knew him earlier. Xiaoro looked regretful. The Holy Church of Light was the leader of the Li dynasties for major sections. As a priest, he could be said to be extremely powerful, and the attraction of power to a man was endless. It was extremely difficult for him to leave the Holy Church of Light. How could there be such a wonderful thing in this world? Just give up, Xiao Xiao said. Xiao Rou nodded and said, but I benefited a lot from sparring with him. Then let's have a good exchange and improve each other, Xiao Xiao said. I think he likes sword techniques very much too. For the next few days, Chu Li stayed at the Xiaochunyang Peak and practiced swordsmanship with the ladies. He had already learned the plain girl swordsmanship and was incorporating its subtleties into his original swordsmanship. Currently, he had integrated 10 swordsmanship moves. Some were hard, some were soft, some were fast, some were slow, some were exquisite, some were simple. Each had its own subtlety, and its power was astonishing. Right now, these 10 sword techniques still had the shadow of other sword techniques. He needed to purify them even more until the shadow was completely erased, and then he would be able to establish a unique sect. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. He and Xiao Rou were practicing the agile ape swordsmanship when Duing appeared again and asked them to go to the Divine Hall. It was already evening. The setting sun illuminated the light palace with a red glow. Li Xinghe sat on the armchair to the right of Sun Mingwei with a solemn expression. Sun Mingwei, who was dressed in snow-white clothes and had her face covered with a white veil, was also sitting behind the table with a cold expression in her eyes. Xiao Rou came in and chuckled. What's wrong? Senior Xia. Sun Mingwei gracefully sat behind the desk, cupped her fists, and said lightly, It's better for young Master Li to say it himself. Li Xinghe clasped his fists and bowed. Senior Xia, I observed the sky at night and predicted the movements of the Divine Blood Church. Oh, what did you divine? Xiao Rou smiled. She knew how powerful the disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion were. Their greatest strength was not their martial arts, but their ability to predict the enemy's movements. They were able to predict the opponent's movements through the stars, and thus make arrangements in advance. They could wait for the fish to take the bait, or they could escape, or even hit someone when they were down. Li Xing has said, the Church of the Divine Blood won't send any more experts over. They're already prepared to deal with the joint attack from the Stargazing Pavilion and the Plain Maiden Palace. That's inevitable. They're not blind. Xia Xiao frowned and said coldly, How can we hide it from them? Blame me for being incompetent. Li Xinghe revealed an enraged expression and snorted, If I hadn't let that fellow escape, we wouldn't have alerted him. The Stargazing Pavilion had planned everything out. They would keep their composure and let the Church of the Divine Blood and the Holy Church of Light fight each other. The Holy Church of Light's abilities were not as weak as the Fu Dynasty's martial arts world thought. They were shockingly powerful. If they were to fight the Church of the Divine Blood, they would be able to draw away a large portion of the Church's strength. When the Church of the Divine Blood's attention was fully focused on the Holy Church of Light and sent out a large portion of their experts, the Stargazing Pavilion would seize the opportunity to raid the Church of the Divine Blood's lair. Unfortunately, it was difficult to carry out one's wishful thinking in this world. He did not expect the Plain Maiden Palace to interfere and help the Holy Church of Light. He also did not expect that he would fail to capture the Sixth Church of the Divine Blood's experts and leak the news. The Church of the Divine Blood had made enemies everywhere. Those who were not smart would have been eliminated long ago. When they saw that the Stargazing Pavilion and the Plain Maiden Palace were at the Holy Church of Light, they would immediately think that the two sects were working together to deal with him. Compared to this, taking care of the Holy Church of Light was obviously a trivial matter. They could do it any time in the future. However, they had to guard against the two sects now, so they would not send any more experts to teach the Holy Church of Light a lesson. Chu Li asked, Young Master Li, how do you know that they won't send more people over? I deduced it by observing the sky. Li Xinghe frowned. Chu Li shook his head and said, Predicting the sky isn't 100% accurate, right? Most likely. Li Xinghe's tone was cold as he glared at Chu Li. He could not tolerate people doubting the antique study of the Stargazing Pavilion. Chu Li's tone was filled with distrust, which made him feel disgusted. Chu Li said indifferently, We'd rather believe it's true than not. What if they come? Wouldn't it be terrible if they're defenseless? Li Xinghe stared at him with a dark expression. Even if they come, the Holy Church of Light shouldn't be powerless to fight back. He was annoyed that Chu Li's words had blocked his mouth and prevented him from saying anything else. Chu Li shook his head and said, "Young Master Li, you must be thinking of sending our experts over, right? It'd be best if they can go. The stargazing pavilion will be eternally grateful." Li Xinghe suppressed his anger and said in a deep voice. Chu Li shook his head. "We had an agreement back then. The Holy Church is only responsible for the Church of the Divine Blood's experts in the Li dynasty. They won't go to the Fu dynasty." The martial arts world in the Fu dynasty viewed the other countries as slaves. They could cause trouble in other countries, but the other countries could not cause trouble in the Fu dynasty. If the Holy Church of Light's experts were to participate in the battle in the Fu dynasty, they would become the public enemy of the martial arts world in the Fu dynasty. Li Xinghe frowned and stared at him coldly. Chu Li said, "If we dare to help you in the Fu dynasty, even the stargazing pavilion won't be able to protect us." Li Xinghe's expression was uncertain. Xiao frowned and said, "Young Master Li, since the Church of the Divine Blood is prepared, I think we should forget about it. Let's just pretend this never happened. It's not worth fighting recklessly." Even if the two sects did not take action, the Church of the Divine Blood would restrain themselves and not provoke the Plain Maiden Palace. Li Xinghe shook his head slowly. Since things have come to this, it's like an arrow knocked on a bowstring. There's no choice but to release it. If that's the case, won't we have to fight recklessly? That'll be troublesome. Xiao frowned and shook her head. It's not a good idea. The Church of the Divine Blood was powerful. If they did not disperse their forces, the Plain Maiden Palace and the Stargazing Pavilion might not be able to break into the headquarters even if they joined forces. Even if they managed to break into the headquarters, their vitality would be greatly damaged. The other sects would definitely take advantage of the situation. Li Xinghe said, "How can we let go of such a rare opportunity? We've deduced that the Bishop of the Church of the Divine Blood has gone astray in his cultivation." "I see," Xiao muttered. Li Xinghe said in a deep voice, "Once the Bishop of the Church of the Divine Blood recovers, you'll miss a great opportunity. Is the Plain Maiden Palace willing to let that happen?" Chu Li said, "Young Master Li, you guys keep thinking about breaking into the Church of the Divine Blood's headquarters. Do you guys have a request? Is there something in the headquarters that you guys want?" Li Xinghe shook his head. "We just want to teach the Church of the Divine Blood a lesson. They're searching for martial arts from all sects in the world. They're fearless. We should teach them a lesson." Sun Mingyue suddenly said, "How about this? Let priest Zhao go to the Fu dynasty. Young Master Li, this is the greatest sincerity we can offer." Li Xinghe looked at Chu Li. When he saw that Chu Li was about to speak, he quickly sighed and stopped him. He said helplessly, "All right then, Brother Zhao will go." "Thank you, Saint." Sun Mingyue said, "Young Master Li, you can go first. Priest Zhao will leave in 3 days." Chapter 13:31. Once Li Xinghe left, Xiao looked away and smiled. "My saint, are you really sending Priest Zhao to the Fu dynasty?" Sun Mingyue replied, "The stargazing pavilion won't give up if he doesn't go." "All right." Xiao smiled. "No one could say anything if I only send one person. It's just a personal favor, and it won't involve the Holy Church of Light. However, the Fu dynasty's martial arts world is too dangerous. Young Zhao, you must be careful." Chu Li fist saluted. "Yes." Xiao said, "Young Zhao, why don't you follow us back and stay at Plain Maiden Palace for a few days before going to the Stargazing Pavilion? The palace leader will definitely like a handsome man like you." Chu Li shook his head. "Thank you for your kindness, Senior Xia. I'll go to the Stargazing Pavilion directly to avoid unnecessary trouble." That's fine." Xiao nodded. "Once this is over, you must stay at Plain Maiden Palace for a few days." "Yes." Chu Li nodded helplessly. He could not stand Xiao's enthusiasm. Moreover, he was not interested after knowing what she was thinking. After all, he already had Shao Qi as his wife. He missed Shao Qi dearly as he could not return to the Ji dynasty for the past few days. However, it would be inappropriate to reject Xiao's repeated invitations. He could only accept them and find a chance to reject them. Xiaorou and the others left to return to Plain Maiden Palace. They believed in Li Xinghe's prediction that the Church of the Divine Blood would not come again. Chu Li waited until they left before turning to look at Sun Mingyue. "My saint," Sun Mingyue said, "come with me." She stood up and left the table. Her white robe fluttered as she walked out of Divine Light Basilica and went straight to the cave where Chu Li had isolated himself. The inside of the crystal light cave was bright and illuminated. The afterglow of the setting sun made this place magnificent and beautiful. Sun Mingyue turned around and stared at Chu Li. Chu Li looked at her in confusion. When his eyes met her crystal-clear eyes, he asked, "What's the matter, Saint? There's a secret skill here that you're qualified to learn." She looked at Chu Li thoughtfully. Chu Li felt goosebumps from her stare as if she could see through him. Although he knew she could not, he still felt uncomfortable as he was guilty. He smiled. "What secret skill?" "Great void brightness technique." Sun Mingyue's voice was gentle, much slower than usual. "But there's one condition. This secret art can only be passed on through enlightenment. It can't be passed on to anyone else." Chu Li was stunned for a moment before he smiled. "That must be a top-notch secret skill. You've seen my movement technique before. I'm using the Great Void Brightness technique." Sun Mingyue replied calmly. "It's similar to the Titanium Temple's God's Limbs. It's a secret skill recorded in the Great Light Scripture, not a divine power." Chu Li asked curiously, "How is it different from God's limbs?" "God's feet uses the power of the soul," Sun Mingyue said. "This technique uses inner energy." Chu Li had a sudden realization. The Great Light Void technique is a void shift technique. The most important thing is to act according to your own strength. Don't forcefully shift too far. If your inner strength is insufficient, I'm afraid you'll fall into the void turbulence and your soul will be destroyed. Remember this." Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li nodded. "Then how do I know how far I can teleport?" "You can try it yourself after you've cultivated it," Sun Mingyue said. "Don't be greedy. You can teleport more than once. It's better to have an idea." Chu Li smiled. "With this, I can go anywhere I want in this vast world." He pretended to be excited and fascinated. This technique also involves the use of a part of the power of the soul. It's extremely difficult to cultivate, but your aptitude and comprehension are extraordinary. You should be able to cultivate it. Sun Mingyue pondered. "It'll be best if you can learn it within these 3 days. If not, then you're not fated to learn this secret skill." 3 days. Chu Li nodded slowly. "So, it's an epiphany?" "Yes, it's an epiphany," Sun Mingyue said. "If you can't achieve an epiphany, you won't be able to cultivate it. However, the enlightenment this time is different from the previous ones. It requires the deepest level, and you'll need to completely let down your guard." Chu Li said emotionally. "Then pass it on to me." He answered without hesitation. He wanted to show his magnanimity. However, his heart trembled. He did not know if Sun Mingyue was testing him. There were 3 levels of enlightenment: knowledge, wisdom, and spirit. The deepest level that Sun Mingyue mentioned was spirit. It required the recipient to let down their guard and open their mind. The caster had to enter the recipient's mind and impart the content to be imparted. Once it was imprinted in the recipient's mind, it would be as if he had already learned it. During this process, the recipient would have no secrets in front of the caster. Everything would be presented in front of the caster, and he could see whatever he wanted to see. This level not only required the caster to have a strong power of the soul, but also required the recipient to trust the caster completely and let down their guard. Otherwise, it would not be successful. Chu Li felt that Sun Mingyue's motive for teaching him this technique was not simple. It was not only for his contribution, but also to find out more about him. However, if he hesitated or even rejected the enlightenment, it would mean that he had a guilty conscience. This could be considered an overt plot. Sun Mingyue said, "I'm teaching you this technique because you performed a lot of meritorious deeds and should be rewarded. Secondly, you go to the Fu dynasty and it'll be dangerous. The martial arts world of the Fu dynasty isn't the Li dynasty. Without an escape technique, you might die at any time." Chu Li nodded. "Yes, Sun Mingwe said, "Going to the stargazing pavilion to participate in the battle is more dangerous. Remember not to put in too much effort. Don't rush to the front, just muddle through." Chu Li said, "I think there must be a reason why they want to deal with the Church of the Divine Blood so badly. It shouldn't be some kind of hatred. As far as I know, the Divine Blood Church has a secret book called the Heavenly Star Jade Stamp." Sun Mingwe muttered, "I heard that it came from the realm beyond heaven. The stargazing pavilion's target might be that Heavenly Astral Jade Stamp." Chu Li thought for a while and finally shook his head. Although he was well-read, he had never heard of this name. Sun Mingwe said, "Rumor has it that this secret manual is the star-gazing technique passed down from the Outland. Unfortunately, the Church of the Divine Blood is unable to cultivate it. The stargazing pavilion has always wanted it, but no one can enter the Church of the Divine Blood's main altar unless they're an enlightened master." "I see." Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingwe said, "I'll teach you the Great Light Void technique now." "Yes," Chu Li replied. He sat cross-legged on the bed, closed his eyes, and began to meditate. Sun Mingwe sat opposite him on the bed. They could hear each other's breaths. She closed her eyes and began to meditate. This time, the enlightenment technique required a huge amount of soul energy. After a while, Sun Mingwe slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were clear and calm, and her aura was ethereal like a fairy standing on the clouds. She did not have a trace of the mortal world. She raised her arm and slowly extended her index finger. Her finger was long and smooth like a jade tube, emitting a soft luster. She slowly touched the center of Chu Li's eyebrows. Boom! A loud sound rang in her ears. Then, her vision darkened, and she suddenly stood in the endless void. She stopped in midair and saw a giant Buddha sitting cross-legged in the middle of the vast void. It was as majestic as a mountain, and when she looked up, she could only see a huge lotus seat. 3 colored lotuses floated in the sky. One by one, the lotuses landed on the giant Buddha's body and quietly integrated into it. However, the number of lotuses in the sky did not decrease at all. It was as if there was no end to them. Chapter 1332. Sun Mingwe was surprised to see this huge, 3-headed Buddha. Even though he had transformed into the Great Light Buddha and was calm, she carefully observed them. The 3 Buddhas closed their eyes, formed a mudra with their hands, and chanted sutras. Flowers condensed in front of their mouths and floated in the air, gradually falling into their bodies like snowflakes falling into the water. The 3 Buddhas all looked like Buddhas, but their expressions were different. One was calm, one was smiling, and the last one was compassionate. She could recognize them as Mahavarokana Buddha, Great Light Buddha, and Ksitigarbha Buddha respectively. She was shocked and thought to herself, no wonder Zhao Dai's cultivation speed is so fast. He has combined 3 scriptures to such an extent. In this way, when he cultivates, the 3 scriptures complement each other. Naturally, his cultivation speed is extremely fast, maybe even 3 times faster than ordinary people. She quickly calmed herself down and became as calm as ever. The Great Light Buddha slowly chanted and wanted to see everything that happened in Chu Li's mind. As her chanting grew louder and echoed in the void of Chu Li's mind, the void in Chu Li's mind began to change. The scenes that Chu Li had experienced earlier appeared in the void. Chu Li presented Zhao Dai's childhood experience to Sun Mingwe, then everything that happened after he entered the Holy Church of Light. Sun Mingwe saw everything clearly and finally felt relieved. She never thought that the void in the void sea could be faked. She did not know that the bright moon in the void could manipulate the scenes that appeared in the void. What Sun Mingwe saw was only the scene reflected by the omniscient mirror. The omniscient mirror was formed from Chu Li's rationality. It was extremely clear and accurate about what should and should not appear. After Sun Mingwe saw it, she closed her eyes, and the Great Light Buddha began to chant another scripture. As he chanted, a ray of light appeared behind his head. The light slowly solidified and finally turned into a bright moon. It was bright and flawless. Although it was not as big as the moon formed by the omniscient mirror, its clarity and brightness were not inferior to it. The Great Light Buddha continued to chant, and the light will gradually floated up from the back of her head to the back of the Great Light Buddha that Chu Li had transformed into. The Great Light Buddha that Chu Li had transformed into suddenly stopped chanting the Great Light Scripture. The lotus stopped and disappeared. When he opened his mouth again, he chanted the same scripture as Sun Mingwe. The halo at the back of his head gradually became brighter and brighter as he chanted the Great Light Buddha. Finally, it slowly merged with the head of the Great Light Buddha that Chu Li had transformed into. The Great Light Buddha's expression did not change as he continued to recite the Buddhist scripture. Sun Mingyue sat quietly in the void, observing Chu Li's transformation. After an unknown period of time, as Chu Li, who had transformed into the Great Light Buddha, chanted, rays of bright light appeared in the void. The round Buddha was shimmering and faintly discernible, like the reflection of moonlight on the rippling surface of the water. As time passed, this ball of faintly discernible brilliance gradually solidified under the blessing of the Great Light Buddha's chanting. In the end, it turned into a ball of sparkling and warm brilliance. After solidifying, it turned into a wheel of light that appeared behind the Great Light Buddha's head. Seeing this, the Great Light Buddha that Sun Mingwe had transformed into smiled and slowly dissipated into the void as if it had never been there. Sun Mingwe slowly opened her eyes and looked at Chu Li calmly. She looked haggard. She glanced at the sky outside and saw that it was already noon. It must have been a night and half a day. Normally, even if she did not eat, drink, sleep, or rest, she would still be full of energy and would not look like this. Now, however, she looked so haggard as if she had not slept for 10 days and 10 nights. Her head was heavy. This was the price of performing the enlightenment technique. She did not mind it and closed her eyes again to regulate her breath. Deep down, she sighed at Chu Li's great luck and excellent comprehension. He actually managed to comprehend the Great Light Void technique so quickly. This technique was extremely difficult to cultivate. It required a sufficient understanding of the Great Light Scripture and a strong enough soul. There were many masters in the Holy Church of Light, but apart from Master and herself, no one else had successfully cultivated this technique. Now, there was finally one more person. Once this technique was cultivated, it would be the most reliable way to protect one's life. As long as one did not court death and exhausted all of his inner energy, he would be able to escape. Once the Great Light Void technique was performed, it would be impossible for the opponent to catch up. It was different from the god's limbs. Chu Li slowly opened his eyes, which were shining brightly. The entire room seemed to be filled with an invisible force, making it difficult to breathe. Sun Mingwe opened her bright eyes and met his gaze. She smiled. "How is it?" Chu Li gave a fist salute. "Thank you, Saint. It's your comprehension that's good." Sun Mingwe shook her head. Chu Li smiled. He frowned and pondered for a moment, then suddenly disappeared. He kept moving through the void to experience the wonders of the Great Light Void technique. Using inner energy to move one's body through the void was different from the god's limbs. It was slightly strenuous and required a large amount of inner energy. The Great Light Void technique was more like an enhancement of the imminent skyline technique. It could move a long distance in an instant, but the longer the distance, the more inner energy it consumed. Without an extremely deep inner energy, it was impossible to activate the Great Light Void technique. The Great Light Void technique was better than the imminent skyline technique in that it could move a longer distance. If one's inner energy was deep enough, they could move 1,000 miles in an instant. To other cultivators, the most difficult thing was not the depth of their cultivation, but the use of soul energy. This was a power that was different from inner energy. Only the soul energy could locate one's position in the void. Otherwise, once it was activated, one would be lost in the void and vanish. After experiencing this empowerment, Sun Mingyue no longer doubted him and trusted him completely. She said, "With this technique, you'll have a solid foundation. When you arrive at the Fu dynasty, keep your eyes open and see what they're up to." Chu Li looked up at her. Saint, what you mean is be prepared for danger in times of peace. You should think about how the Holy Church will deal with the Fu Dynasty's martial arts world if they seek revenge, Sun Mingwe said. Chu Li slowly nodded. Actually, I don't want to go to the Fu Dynasty because it's too suffocating. The Holy Church is the #1 sect, but we have to suffer their wrath. It's really detestable. With the Holy Church's strength, it should be one of the 8 major sects, right? We're still lacking a little. Sun Mingwe shook her head. We don't have enough masters. She looked at Chu Li deeply. But now that we have you, we have a glimmer of hope. Me? Chu Li shook his head and laughed. How can I do it by myself? We don't lack grandmasters, Sun Mingwe said. But we lack top-notch masters. The 8 major sects of the Fu Dynasty have more top-notch masters than the Holy Church. Otherwise, we'd be able to fight them. Chu Li pondered. Top-notch masters, Sun Mingwe sighed. Such masters are hard to come by. Fortunately, we have you. Chu Li asked, how can the Fu Dynasty produce so many top-notch masters? Is it because their heart technique is more profound? Sun Mingwe nodded slowly. Their heart technique is indeed profound. Our divine light technique isn't bad either, right? Chu Li asked. Sun Mingwe said, the divine light technique is not inferior to the 8 major sects, but unfortunately, it has a high requirement for aptitude. It's hard to produce top-notch masters. Can't we find anyone with good aptitude? Normal aptitude is useless. Sun Mingwe frowned. The Holy Church has placed great importance on searching for children and young people with good aptitude. Unfortunately, they're not as talented as the Fu Dynasty. There's nothing we can do about it. The Fu Dynasty was located right in the middle of the continent. It was a land of outstanding people. The talents of the other 4 countries were far inferior to them. This had been the case since ancient times. Chapter 1333. Chu Li nodded. This was something that couldn't be helped. No matter how capable Sun Mingwe was, it was impossible for her to create something out of nothing. Whether one's aptitude was good or bad depended on one's innate talent. Although there were rare flowers, herbs, or natural treasures that could change one's aptitude, such as the cold pool in the 100,000 mountains, it could only be found by chance and not sought. Moreover, talent was more important than comprehension. Otherwise, even a soaring grass would be useless. Apart from the Great Light Void technique that I've imparted to you, I've also imparted the last part of the Great Light Scripture. Sun Mingwe said, with this section, the Scripture of Great Light can be considered complete, and its true power will be unleashed. Your cultivation level will skyrocket. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Sun Mingwe calmly replied, it's not that I'm worried about you. It's because the last section of the Great Light Scripture has an extremely high cultivation level requirement. Even Dharma King and even Priest Lu couldn't meet the requirements, so they couldn't be taught. Chu Li nodded slowly. Sun Mingwe said, after mastering the Great Void Light technique, it won't take too long to go back and forth. Come back as soon as possible. Chu Li replied, don't worry, Saint. I won't force myself. I'll act according to the situation. However, the disciples of Stargazing Pavilion are all very shrewd, so it'll be hard for me to take advantage of them. I'll just make up the numbers and watch the show. It's good that you think so. Sun Mingwe nodded and said, you don't want my jade talisman anymore, right? Chu Li replied, the Saint's jade talisman is very precious. I have the divine void light technique, so if I still need your jade talisman, I'll really be useless. That's good. Sun Mingwe nodded. However, some powerful people from the Divine Blood Church should be careful. Now that she had completely immersed herself in it, she no longer had the intention to test Chu Li. Instead, she had greater expectations for him. She told Chu Li about the powerful figures of the Church of the Divine Blood one by one. Then, she took out a dossier with portraits and introductions of their martial arts and personalities in great detail. Heavy rain poured down, and the sky above Meteor Fall Peak seemed to be leaking. Chu Li stood at the entrance of a cave and looked at the downpour outside. He sighed and said, the weather isn't fair. It's already been 3 days. It's impossible to travel in this kind of weather. The cave he was in was located halfway up Falling Star Peak. It was Li Xinghe's cave abode. The decorations of this cave were exquisite, gorgeous, and extravagant. There wasn't a single thing here that wasn't valuable. Even the table and chair Li Xinghe sat on were made of flawless white jade. They emitted a warm luster, as if clear spring water was contained within them. Li Xinghe sat by the jade table, holding a book in his hand. Who said we have to hurry? It's not time yet. Chu Li turned to look at him. It's already been 3 days, and you're still dawdling? The Church of the Divine Blood has long been prepared. Could it be that they left time for them to invite helpers? He had been at the stargazing pavilion for 3 days. However, it had been raining cats and dogs for the past 3 days. Occasionally, it would stop for a while and then continue. Li Xinghe shook his head. No rush. Chu Li asked, the stargazing pavilion observes the sky at night. Can you predict the weather? Of course, no problem. Li Xinghe nodded and put away the scroll in his hand. He said helplessly, we still have to wait until the next day. We'll move tomorrow night. How long will it take to reach the Church of the Divine Blood? Chu Li asked. We can get there in 1 day and 1 night. Li Xinghe held the scroll and tapped it on his palm. We'll rest for half a night. We can attack while they're asleep. Brother Li, tell me the truth. The stargazing pavilion is going against the Church of the Divine Blood because of the cosmic jade stamp, right? Chu Li asked. Li Xinghe squinted his eyes. I've underestimated you. Chu Li said, it seems that the cosmic jade stamp is very important to you. You're willing to attack the Church of the Divine Blood to get it. This is a deadly feud that will bring endless trouble. What's there to fear from the Church of the Divine Blood now that we've obtained the cosmic jade stamp? Li Xinghe scoffed. Moreover, this is a sneak attack. They won't be able to avoid our sneak attack, even if they're prepared. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Is the cosmic jade stamp really that powerful? The relationship between the two of them was mysterious. Li Xinghe had always been conceited and arrogant. He was a once-in-a-century genius of the stargazing pavilion. Previously, he did not take Chu Li seriously. Later on, he began to doubt him. As Chu Li's brilliance grew, he had no choice but to take him seriously. Hence, he became competitive. When it came to the interests of both sects, the two of them would fight with words and arrows. However, they would also cooperate. It's more powerful than you think. Li Xinghe nodded slowly and said solemnly, it's the ultimate path of the stars. It's worthless to others, but it's been left in the Church of the Divine Blood's headquarters for hundreds of years. Chu Li shook his head. Why didn't you exchange it with them? They're not stupid. They'd rather keep it on the shelf than exchange it with us. They don't want us to be like tigers that have grown wings. In the end, they'll have to get it themselves. Li Xinghe scoffed. Chu Li said, then, didn't you think that this is a trap to lure you into it? If they're able to make us fall into their trap, it's their ability. We're convinced, Li Xinghe said. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. That's true. However, I'd like to give you a piece of advice. Those who are good at swimming will drown. Beware of traps. Yes. Li Xinghe nodded perfunctorily. Chu Li frowned and became more worried. Suddenly, 3 silhouettes rushed up the mountain in the heavy rain. 2 young men in blue robes and 1 in yellow robes floated without touching the ground. The rain slid away when it was 2 inches away from their bodies. An invisible force shrouded the 3 of them, preventing them from being disturbed by the rain. In a short while, they were close to the mountain. The light dimmed and the cold air assaulted them. The 3 of them had entered the cave. Chu Li took 3 steps back to make way. The 2 young men in blue robes gave a fist salute. Senior Brother Li, this is Senior Brother Su-in from the Plain Maiden Palace. Their blue robes were spotless and clean. They spoke calmly. Yes, you may leave. Li Xinghe nodded and gave a fist salute to the young man in yellow robes. Brother Su, Chu Li sized up the young man in yellow robes. He was tall and burly. His facial features were handsome, but a long scar from the corner of his left eye to the corner of his left lip ruined his good looks. Instead, he looked sinister and ruthless. It was a chilling sight to behold. Su-in gave a fist salute and smiled. I've finally made it in time in this horrible weather. He grinned. His sinister aura was gone, and he was bright and cheerful. Chu Li felt that this was an interesting character. His cultivation level was not inferior to Li Xinghe's and was only slightly inferior to himself. Come, let me introduce the two of you. Li Xinghe smiled. Su Yin waved his hand. There's no need for introductions. I've heard of Brother Zhao Day's name for the past few days. I'm Su Yin from the Plain Maiden Palace. Chu Li gave a fist salute and smiled. The Plain Maiden Palace? Su Yin replied. My wife is a disciple of the Plain Maiden Palace. As for me, I'm considered the son-in-law of the Plain Maiden Palace. I see. Chu Li was enlightened. Su Yin grinned. I can tell that Master's Junior Xia Ro admires you greatly and can't wait to recruit you into the Plain Maiden Palace. Chu Li shook his head awkwardly. Su Yin laughed. I advise you to think it through. It's not easy to be the son-in-law of the Plain Maiden Palace. Chu Li shook his head. Su Yin said, think about it. There are so many sisters-in-law who are thinking of ways to deal with you. You can't offend them too much. It's such a headache. Li Xinghe scoffed. Brother Su, you're showing off, aren't you? You're living in a land of tenderness. Sigh. In any case, I'll run away whenever I have the chance. Su Yin sighed helplessly. I can't afford to offend them, but I can't avoid them. Chu Li smiled. Is Brother Su the only one who came this time? Chapter 1334. The three of them chatted in Li Xinghe's cave about the martial arts world and the customs. Su Yin was extremely eloquent and experienced. His conversation was humorous and calm. Chu Li finally understood why he was able to marry a beauty from Plain Maiden Palace despite his disfigured appearance. He did have an admirable demeanor. Even someone like Li Xinghe was filled with admiration for Su Yin. Chu Li was also filled with admiration. Chu Li soon understood why Plain Maiden Palace was involved. Stargazing Pavilion gifted Plain Maiden Palace a star atlas. Not only was the star atlas useful for cultivating the heavenly heart technique, but it was also very useful for Plain Maiden Palace's disciples to comprehend sword techniques and break through bottlenecks. With the Star Atlas, Plain Maiden Palace's disciples' swordsmanship realm would improve by leaps and bounds. Plain Maiden Palace's ability would improve by leaps and bounds. Due to this, Plain Maiden Palace would send 20 disciples to assist Stargazing Pavilion in breaking into the Church of the Divine Blood's headquarters. Li Xinghe grinned. Brother Zhao, if the Holy Church of Light is willing to lend us a hand by sending 20 top-notch powerhouses, we'll send a star map to your church. You can send a letter to the saint and ask her to consider it. Chu Li shook his head. The Holy Church of Light will never send masters to the Fu dynasty to avoid getting themselves into trouble. After all, the Holy Church is different from Plain Maiden Palace. Sigh. Li Xinghe shook his head. It's a pity to miss such a good opportunity. Chu Li said, it's better not to take this risk if you're not capable. Otherwise, you'll choke to death. All right then. Li Xinghe stopped persuading him. Brother Zhao, you only have one target, the genius disciple of the Church of the Divine Blood, Wei Wuwei. Keep him occupied, and the mission will be completed. We'll reward you handsomely. Chu Li pretended to be moved. What kind of reward? He was secretly furious, but did not show it, as if he had never heard of this Wei Wuwei. This person was the first powerful person that Sun Mingwei had mentioned. He was the #1 master under the Bishop of the Church of the Divine Blood, and had a similar status as Sun Mingwei. Li Xinghe must be up to no good by handing this person over to him. You can pick a treasure from our pavilion's bountiful treasure pavilion, Li Xinghe said. These are rare treasures. Oh. Chu Li looked excited. What kind of treasures are there? Some divine weapons, armor, and some ancient martial arts manuals. Li Xinghe smiled and said, Brother Zhao will definitely be satisfied. Chu Li smiled and said, it seems that Wei Wuwei is very powerful. I'm no match for him. Li Xinghe nodded slowly with a solemn expression. He can be considered a true genius. It is said that his blood garment divine art has reached the 9th level, almost at perfection. His blood jade palm has also reached perfection. Its power is shocking. Chu Li asked, am I his opponent? Among all the people I've seen, only you, Brother Zhao, can stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Li Xinghe said, all of them are just average talents. leaving others in the dust. Of course, I'll leave such powerful characters to you, Brother Zhao. Let's see who's the number one among you. Chu Li smiled. Brotherly, you think too highly of me. There's no need to defeat him. Just keep him occupied, Li Xing has said. Keeping him occupied will be a great merit for Brother Zhao. Chu Li nodded. I'll give it a try. He knew he had no other choice. However, if he could not defeat Wei Wu Wei, he would not be sent to his death. I believe Brother Zhao will be able to keep him occupied, Li Xing has said. As for Brother Su, you'll fight alongside me. We'll work together to kill the enemy. All right, with your divine foresight, everything will go smoothly. Su Yin smiled. However, Brother Zhao, you must be careful. This Wei Wu Wei is a ruthless character. He's even better than the elders of the Church of the Divine Blood, and is only below the bishop of the Church of the Divine Blood. Chu Li was stunned. He turned his head and smiled bitterly. Brotherly, such a character should be dealt with by the pavilion leader. He could feel Su Yin's kindness and knew that he was reminding him on purpose. Li Xinghe shook his head. The pavilion leader won't make a move. Chu Li asked. The pavilion leader won't go. Yes, Li Xinghe said. The pavilion leader will stay and guard. This. Chu Li was surprised. Li Xinghe said, this is the rule. However, you don't have to worry. The bishop of the Church of the Divine Blood is also heavily injured. It'll be interesting if the bishop of the Church of the Divine Blood recovers. Chu Li shook his head. Speaking of which, I'll be dealing with the strongest one. I'll be the vanguard. Li Xinghe grinned. Capable people do more work. Our stargazing pavilion is good at foretelling, but we're good at fighting. We'll need your help, Brother Zhao. I've been tricked by you, Brotherly. Chu Li shook his head. Forget it. Since I promised, I'll do my best. All right. Thank you, Brother Zhao. Li Xinghe gave a fist salute. The stargazing pavilion's foretelling was indeed accurate. The heavy rain stopped in the evening. The crowd set off. A total of 22 disciples from the stargazing pavilion were dispatched. 10 of them were old men with white eyebrows, 11 were middle-aged men, and the only young man was Li Xinghe. These were the elites of the stargazing pavilion. They did not come out in full force. They continued their journey without saying a word. They ran from night to dawn and continued their journey after stopping to eat their rations. They ran for the entire day and stopped in the dense forest of a huge mountain in the evening. There were already 2 groups of people in the forest. They sat in a circle 20 meters apart. One group consisted of 20 disciples from the Plain Maiden Palace. Mei Chun, the 4 women, Xiaorou, and Xia Qing were nowhere to be seen. There were 10 men and 10 attractive middle-aged women. Chu Li knew that these men were the son-in-law of the Plain Maiden Palace. Every one of them was a powerful expert. The other group consisted of experts from the Prophecy Pavilion. They were personally led by the Pavilion Master of the Prophecy Pavilion. There were 30 elites from the Prophecy Pavilion. Chu Li's expression darkened when he saw the Pavilion Master of the Prophecy Pavilion, Su Yoning. It was as if he had met an enemy. He was secretly moved. When he saw the Pavilion Master of the Prophecy Pavilion, Su Yoning, he thought of the Starstone again. He had never given up on the Starstone. Initially, he wanted to wait until this matter was over before slowly making plans. It was better to get his hands on it. Now, however, he saw an opportunity. The Starstone must be with Su Yoning. If he was severely injured, he might be able to take advantage of the situation and snatch it away. The people from the Prophecy Pavilion only shot a cold glance at Chu Li before turning their eyes away and pretending not to see him. Chu Li knew that they had the same thoughts. If he was severely injured, they would definitely hit him while he was down and take his life while he was down. Su Yin went to the disciples of the Plain Maiden Palace and said a few words. Their gazes gathered on Chu Li and carefully sized him up. Chu Li sat in the distance. He gave a fist salute and nodded in acknowledgement. Since the Plain Maiden Palace had shown such enthusiasm, he naturally had to reciprocate their goodwill. There would definitely be opportunities for cooperation in the future. Li Xinghe seemed to be extremely exhausted. He sat cross-legged to the side and adjusted his breathing. The 4 elders from the stargazing pavilion slowly came before Li Xinghe. They did not speak and sat cross-legged according to the 4 cardinal directions, surrounding Li Xinghe in the center. The four of them formed a hand seal and remained motionless. Li Xinghe opened his eyes for a moment before closing them again and continuing to adjust his breathing. The four elders had white brows and solemn expressions. After they sat down, their auras gradually weakened. A moment later, they rose slowly and floated horizontally. They were a foot above the ground. After floating in the air for 10 breaths, they formed a hand seal and remained motionless. However, their bodies began to revolve around Li Xinghe. Chapter 1335. Li Xinghe formed a seal with both of his hands and changed his hand gestures from time to time. The starlight on his body flickered and fluctuated along with the hand gestures, sometimes brightening and sometimes dimming. The four old men had already stopped. Their faces were pale as they adjusted their breathing motionlessly. Li could sense a massive and vast energy descending upon Li Xinghe's body. The aura emitted from Li Xinghe's body was like a mountain, suffocating Li. Li could not wait to escape and stay away from Li Xinghe. The aura was vast and ancient, as if it came from ancient times or the unreachable sky. It was unfathomable. Li was secretly impressed. It seemed like Li Xinghe was a genius among geniuses. Although his cultivation level was not as high as Li's, his stargazing technique was definitely one of the best in Stargazing Pavilion. That was why he had participated in this operation. About 15 minutes later, the starlight on his body suddenly penetrated the back of his head. Li Xinghe slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were like two flashes of cold lightning that lit up the entire jungle. The four old men slowly opened their eyes. The light in Li Xinghe's eyes gradually faded and returned to normal. His eyes were clearer and clearer, as if they could see through one's heart. "Xinghe, did you find anything?" one of the old men asked. The four of them seemed to have aged a few years, as their voices were hoarse and dry. Li Xinghe nodded slowly. "Yes, Master Senior. Everyone, please follow me." He glanced at everyone. "Listen to my orders and don't make any noise." Everyone nodded. After this strange phenomenon, they understood that the commander this time was Li Xinghe, who was the youngest in Stargazing Pavilion. However, in the martial arts world, it was not surprising that those who were more experienced came first. Li Xinghe drifted forward like a wisp of smoke while the rest followed closely behind. Li sensed a huge change in Li Xinghe's aura. It had changed from the ancient aura to an unfathomable one that could not be grasped even when standing in front of him. It was as if he was a reflection of a lake. After rushing for 4 hours, they had covered more than 1,000 miles with their light body technique and arrived in front of a lush mountain range. Through Li's omniscient mirror, the mountain range was like a giant dragon entrenched between heaven and earth. The omniscient mirror could not see the end of it. Li Xinghe turned to look at everyone. Under the bright moonlight, his eyes were as bright as lanterns. "We'll enter the Church of the Divine Blood soon. Let's find a gap and try our best to stay calm." Everyone nodded and became nervous. Once they entered the lair of the Church of the Divine Blood, it was the most dangerous moment for them to face death. Li Xinghe formed a seal with both hands, and a ball of blue light appeared between his fingers. He pointed forward and the blue light spread out, turning into an indistinct light screen. It flew forward silently and disappeared into the night. Li Xinghe heaved a sigh of relief and whispered, "Follow my footprints." He glided into the valley. Under the bright moonlight, everyone followed closely behind him, following his footsteps silently. Everyone restrained their auras, not making a single sound. Li Xinghe would stop from time to time and form hand seals to produce a ball of blue light before continuing forward. Li understood that he was trying to break the formation. The balls of blue light had an inconceivable and miraculous effect. They were able to soundlessly break through the formation without destroying it or alerting the others. It was similar to the Deva shedding art that he cultivated, but it was a level higher. Li could feel the power of this huge formation. His heart was pounding with alarm, reminding him to leave immediately and not to enter again. Soon, they passed through a dense forest and arrived at the valley. There were many buildings in the valley. There were pavilions and pavilions built against the mountains, looking simple and unadorned. Under the bright moonlight, the scenery in the valley was pleasant. It was the complete opposite of the ferocious appearance they had imagined. They had initially thought that the headquarters of the Church of the Divine Blood would be sinister and terrifying. After all, the martial arts they cultivated were unusually sinister and violent. However, the buildings in front of them made them doubt if they had arrived at the headquarters of the Church of the Divine Blood. Some people would believe them if they said they were from the Plain Maiden Palace. It was quiet in the valley as everyone had fallen asleep. Only dozens of lanterns were scattered around. The entire valley was like stars in the night sky, making the valley seem even darker and bigger. Nothing could hide from the observation of the omniscient mirror. He could not see the valley clearly because of the formation earlier. Now that he had bypassed the formation, his vision became clear. Chu Li's heart skipped a beat, and he whispered, "This is bad." Although his voice was soft, it was exceptionally loud when everyone was quiet. Everyone immediately looked over. Chu Li and Su Yin were walking together. They were in the middle of the group from the Plain Maiden Palace. Li Xinghe stopped abruptly and turned his head to look over. Chu Li whispered, "We've fallen into an ambush." Li Xinghe frowned and glared at him. "Don't spout nonsense." With the starlight around him, he seemed to have changed into a different person. His gaze was cold and ruthless, his voice was cold, and there was a sense of majesty in between his brows. Chu Li sighed. "They're not sleeping. They're all waiting for us. It's best that we retreat now." "Impossible," Li Xinghe said coldly. Chu Li looked at him helplessly. "It's not too late to leave now. Don't blame us for being rude if you continue to spout nonsense." Li Xinghe scoffed and said, "Even if there's an ambush, we'll move forward bravely since we're here. There's no going back." Su Yin tugged at Chu Li's sleeve and gave him a look. Chu Li nodded helplessly. He saw that the Church of the Divine Blood's masters were waiting in the buildings. They were resting on their beds to recuperate and recharge their energy. Each of them was energetic and well-prepared. There was a total of 120 Church of the Divine Blood's masters. They were all grandmasters with profound cultivation levels, and their abilities were more powerful than his group. It was almost impossible for his group to win if they fought the Church of the Divine Blood's masters head-on. Their best option was to turn around and escape. They might not be able to catch up to them. However, it was obvious that the Stargazing Pavilion was going to fight them head-on. They were determined to snatch the Heavenly Astral Jade Badge, and there was no telling how many people would die. He was furious and worried as he thought about this. It did not matter if the Stargazing Pavilion's masters died or if the Divine Prophecy Pavilion died, but it would be a pity if the people from the Plain Maiden Palace died. He sighed. He could protect himself against the Church of the Divine Blood's masters, but it was too difficult to save them. Li Xinghe has said they must be prepared. This is going to be a tough battle. I've read the astrology. We'll definitely win this battle. Everyone, get ready to fight. He glared at Chu Li coldly after he finished speaking. Chu Li shook his head without saying a word. Li Xinghe continued to walk while the rest followed behind him. They arrived at a towering bronze tower. The bronze tower was more than 30 meters tall and had a total of 5 floors. The words Sutra Library glowed coldly under the moonlight, as if they were about to break out of the plaque. Li Xinghe smiled and said, "We'll share the secret manuals we obtain after we attack this tower." Su Yongning, the pavilion leader of the Divine Prophecy Pavilion, said, "I heard that the Church of the Divine Blood's secret manuals are abundant. Most of them are passed down from ancient times. Everyone will benefit immensely if we can obtain them." A middle-aged lady from the Plain Maiden Palace hesitated for a moment before nodding. Chu Li sighed to himself. Birds died for food, and men died for wealth. Who could resist the temptation of ancient secret manuals? Even he was tempted. Li Xinghe performed another hand seal and shot a blue light at the Sutra Library, silently breaking the formation. Chapter 1336. Chu Li sensed a strange energy shrouding the copper tower. It was clearly the power of a formation. The blue light drifted forward and broke the formation silently. Li Xinghe arrived at the copper door and realized that it was locked when he was about to push it open. The huge copper lock hanging in front of the door seemed to be mocking him. Two elders with white beards and eyebrows followed closely behind to protect him. Upon seeing the huge copper lock, he frowned and muttered to himself before turning to look behind him. A middle-aged lady from the Plain Maiden Palace waved her hand. Li Xinghe turned to look at her and nodded. The middle-aged lady followed the footsteps of the three of them and approached them. The long sword at her waist turned into a cold gleam and disappeared again. TSS. After a soft sound, the sword gleam sliced through the copper lock. The copper lock turned into two halves and fell to the ground before being caught by an elder with white beards and eyebrows. The elder did not make any other sound, and the huge ravine remained silent. Everyone had to follow Li Xinghe's footsteps to move forward, so they formed a single line. Chuli was in the middle of the line and felt that something was wrong when he saw the situation in front of him. However, he could not tell what was wrong. He secretly thought that as a genius from the stargazing pavilion, Li Xinghe's intuition should be sharper and he should be able to notice if something was wrong. However, he did not notice anything out of the ordinary. His eyes were as bright as candles and looked a little scary under the moonlight. Li Xinghe made another hand gesture and shot a blue light at the copper door. The omniscient mirror saw that the copper door was suddenly emitting a strange layer of green light that blocked the blue light. Although the omniscient mirror saw that, the others could only see a faint and indistinct blue light pouncing at the copper door. They could not see the green light on the door. Li Xinghe's expression changed slightly, and he made another hand gesture. After changing the hand gesture twice, the blue light on his hand became brighter and darker. He then pounced at the copper door. The people behind him were puzzled. The copper door had clearly been split open. They could have just pushed the door open and rushed in. Why would they waste their energy? However, Li Xinghe's skills had convinced everyone. They did not say anything even though they had doubts. Instead, they waited quietly with their bodies tensed up in case someone rushed over. They understood that the masters from the Church of the Divine Blood must be prepared and that there would be a tough battle. However, if he could snatch the secret manual before the battle, then swagger off and escape, this trip would be worth it. Bang! With a muffled sound, everyone felt the ground tremble. Li Xinghe leaned backward and staggered 2 steps before being supported by the 2 old men behind him. His face suddenly turned pale. Chuli saw that the green light on the 2 doors could not withstand the corrosion of the blue light. After it was dispersed by the blue light, it formed a strong rebound force. Creak! The 2 copper doors slowly opened. Li Xinghe heaved a sigh of relief and revealed a smile. His smile suddenly froze on his face. A ghostly figure floated in front of him and struck his chest with a palm. Bang! Li Xinghe was flung into the air as if he had been rammed by a galloping horse. The ghostly figure flashed and appeared in front of an old man with white eyebrows and a white beard before slapping down with another palm strike. It was so fast that the old man didn't even have a chance to react before he was sent flying along with Li Xinghe. Then came the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th. The masters of the stargazing pavilion could not resist at all. It was only after he had sent the 6th person flying that the rest of the masters of the stargazing pavilion were able to use the small star palm. However, the small star palm posed no threat to the ghostly figure and was easily avoided. Another 2 masters of the stargazing pavilion were sent flying. Everyone's expression changed drastically. How could there be such a fast person? Set up the sword formation. The disciples of the Plain Maiden Palace instantly scattered and formed a sword array. The 10 men of the Plain Maiden Palace were surrounded by the sword array. The disciples of the Plain Maiden Palace moved quickly and moved faster and faster. They turned into shadows, and their figures couldn't be seen clearly. The people of the Prophecy Pavilion had their backs against each other as if they had turned into a porcupine. For disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion flew up to catch Li Xinghe and the others as they landed. The remaining few swarmed toward the ghostly figure and formed a sea of palm energy with the small star palm in an attempt to restrain the opponent's speed. Chuli was pulled to the center of the Plain Maiden Palace's sword formation by Su Yin. His omniscient mirror had already seen that the ghostly figure was a tall and burly young man. He was handsome and elegant with a face that looked as if it was carved out of white jade. His palms were also as if they were carved out of white jade. His body movement, technique, and palm strikes were so fast that it was beyond anyone's imagination. His technique was mediocre but fast. It was so fast that no one could react to it. No matter how exquisite the technique was, it was useless in front of him. Bam, 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 bam. The small star palm could not restrain him at all. He sent another 4 masters of the stargazing pavilion flying in one go. He was fearless and took whatever he wanted. He was truly majestic and insufferably arrogant. Li Xinghe was held in the arms of a middle-aged man. There was blood at the corner of his mouth, and his face was pale. He screamed, "Priest Zhao, he is Wei Wu Wei." He felt as if his internal organs were being cut by knives, and his blood was boiling. He was in so much pain that he wanted to commit suicide in order to escape. He screamed and gestured for Chu Li to attack. Chu Li asked in a deep voice, "He is Wei Wu Wei? I'll leave him to you, Priest Zhao." Li Xinghe nodded vigorously and urged anxiously, "Quick, quick." Su Ying quickly pulled him. "Brother Zhao, what are you doing?" The women of the Plain Maiden Palace turned into shadows under their feet, while the men in the center did not move at all. They seemed to be at ease. Chu Li said, "I promised Brother Li that I can only attack. Don't court death." Su Ying said, "Can you handle this kind of martial arts?" Chu Li shook his head. "I have to attack even if I can't. I can't go back on my word." His cultivation level was far inferior to Wei Wu Wei's. He dared to attack only because he could use the divine void light technique. He could openly use teleportation, which was a body technique that was superior to the imminent skyline technique. Even if he could not win, he could still escape. Who would have thought that Wei Wu Wei would be so powerful? Su Ying shook his head. "Attacking is courting death. Our lives are more important." "Priest Zhao," Li Xinghe screamed and suddenly started coughing violently. Blood gushed out from the corner of his mouth again. Chu Li said in a deep voice, "He's coming." Su Ying quickly pulled Chu Li, but he missed. Chu Li suddenly disappeared from the spot and appeared next to Wei Wu Wei. He swung his arms, and 2 electric lights were shot at Wei Wu Wei. Wei Wu Wei turned around and left without a care. He avoided the flying blades and sent another master of the stargazing pavilion flying. Chu Li snorted with a frown and shot out 2 more blades. The flying blades arrived at Wei Wu Wei's path ahead of time. The nature restoration manifestation had seen through his body technique. There was nothing intricate about his body technique except for its speed. The corner of Wei Wu Wei's mouth curled up into a smile. He didn't seem to mind at all as he suddenly increased his speed by 2 times, sending another expert of the stargazing pavilion flying. Every master that was hit by him spat out blood and fell to the ground. They no longer had the strength to attack. In the blink of an eye, almost all the masters of the stargazing pavilion were sent flying. Chu Li shot out another flying blade. The smile on Wei Wu Wei's face widened. He felt that Chu Li was ridiculous and pounced at another master of the stargazing pavilion. "Moo!" Chu Li suddenly spat out a word that sounded like a great bell. Wei Wu Wei's body stopped. Ding! The flying blade hit Wei Wu Wei's shoulder and let out a clear sound. He was actually wearing inner armor. Chapter 1337. Wei Wu Wei's expression changed, and his smile disappeared as he looked at Chu Li. This time, he would have been injured without the inner armor. He was proud and could not tolerate being injured by such a nobody, so he was furious and murderous. Chu Li disappeared from the spot and avoided Wei Wu Wei's attack. As soon as he appeared, Wei Wu Wei was already in front of him. His palm was like a white jade, but it was so fast that it was impossible to dodge. Chu Li disappeared again and avoided it. Once Chu Li had lured Wei Wu Wei away, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Then, 2 ghost-like shadows drifted out from behind the bronze door and sent 2 more stargazing pavilion masters flying. They were 2 elderly men with white eyebrows and beards. They were dressed in black, and their faces were enshrouded in a purple aura. Although they were fast, they were not as fast as Wei Wu Wei. The masters from Stargazing Pavilion were not mediocre and reacted quickly. Unexpectedly, the two purple-faced elders in black robes did not dodge at all. Instead, they used a method of mutual destruction and forcefully took on the small star palm. Once again, two experts from the Stargazing Pavilion were sent flying, and all the experts from the Stargazing Pavilion were annihilated. The experts of the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries and the Plain Maiden Palace surrounded him and attacked him together. The two old men sneered and shouted, "Do it!" Another 20 masters floated out from behind the bronze door. Almost 100 masters flew out from the valley. Chu Li was speechless as he avoided Wei Wuwei. The Church of the Divine Blood had so many grandmasters. They were indeed one of the 8 major sects in the Fu dynasty. No wonder they were so overbearing and unscrupulous. Only 10 of these masters were under 100 years old, while the rest were over 100 years old. They should be the hidden strength of the Church of the Divine Blood. Other than Wei Wuwei and the others, the rest of the masters under 100 years old did not move. Wei Wuwei suddenly disappeared in front of Chu Li and appeared in front of Su Yongning. He hit him with his palm. Su Yongning's eyes were black and his movements were calm, as if everything was under his control. He was the number 1 master from Stargazing Pavilion, and he blocked Wei Wuwei's palm. Bang! It was like a thunderclap. The wind was strong and sand and stones were blown away. Wei Wuwei's feet left deep footprints, but he did not retreat. Once again, he hit him with his palm. Su Yongning took a step back and saw Wei Wuwei coming again. He snorted and hit him with his palm. Bang! Another explosion sounded. A blush flashed across Wei Wuwei's white, jade-like face, but it immediately disappeared as he once again pounced forward like a ghost. Su Yongning took 2 steps back, his face flushed red, and his eyes flickered with anger. He did not expect his profound cultivation to be inferior to a junior disciple. Even though Wei Wuwei was the first person below the leader of the Divine Blood Church, he still felt very angry. This was because his ambition was to make the Heaven Mystery Pavilion one of the 8 great sects and become the 9th clan. His own martial arts should be on par with the hierarch of the Divine Blood Church, or even better. After all, he had the secret of the soaring grass. But reality was so cruel. He couldn't even defeat Wei Wuwei. Intense anger and disappointment mixed together, turning into raging flames of anger that soared into the sky. Refusing to believe in evil, he fought Wei Wuwei head-on. Bang, 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 bang. The continuous sounds of explosions were endless. Chu Li stood and watched from afar. At this moment, a master from the Church of the Divine Blood, who was over 200 years old and had purple eyebrows, pounced on him. Chu Li started a fight with him, but they were evenly matched. This purple-browed elder's cultivation level was extremely high. The Fu dynasty was indeed full of hidden talents. Chu Li sighed to himself. The two of them were in a deadlock with their fists and palms. They were evenly matched. Although Li Xinghe was gravely injured, he didn't faint. He endured the pain and watched the chaotic battle, but his eyes were fixed on Wei Wuwei. When he saw Wei Wuwei clashing with Su Yongning, he hurriedly cried out, "Holy King Zhao!" Chu Li glared at him helplessly as he fought. He scoffed and said, "Brother Li, please stop. The overall situation is more important. Hurry up and make your move." Li Xinghe shouted. Chu Li shook his head and swung his arms. The cold light was already in front of Wei Wuwei. Wei Wuwei frowned and evaded, but he was forced to take a step back. Su Yongning let out a long sigh of relief. There was already blood at the corner of his mouth. He quickly rushed forward and attacked Wei Wuwei with both palms. At the same time, he glanced at Chu Li. Bang! Chu Li was suddenly sent flying. While he was distracted to deal with Wei Wuwei, his original opponent suddenly expanded and performed a secret skill. He instantly turned into a ghost and hit Chu Li's chest. Chu Li spat out an arrow of blood in the air. When he landed, he hurriedly evaded the purple-browed elder's pursuit. He was chased by the purple-browed elder until he was in a sorry state and could no longer continue to attack Wei Wuwei. Purple-browed bloody hand. Li Xinghe gritted his teeth and snorted. He recognized the identity of the elder who was chasing Chu Li. He was the famous purple-browed bloody hand, one of the top experts of the Church of the Divine Blood. He had become famous 100 years ago and was a powerful figure who could make the martial arts world pale at the mention of his name. He did not suspect that Chu Li was faking it. If it was someone else, Chu Li might have been slacking off and deliberately watched Wei Wuwei deal with Su Yongning. However, his opponent was purple-browed bloody hand. Chu Li could feel how powerful this purple-browed elder was, but he did not take it to heart. He purposely took the palm strike. No one could blame him for not helping. The rest of the people from the Prophecy Pavilion surrounded the experts of the Stargazing Pavilion lying on the ground and formed a formation. Although they were at a disadvantage, they were still able to hold on. This formation allowed everyone's power to merge as one, like a turtle shell. It was not easy to break through the defense. The women of the Plain Maiden Palace floated as their swords flashed like a waterfall, entangling the men in the center. The men seemed to be leisurely, but they were not. They would stab with their sword from time to time, like a venomous snake spitting out its tongue. It was abnormally tricky and shockingly powerful, so the experts of the Church of the Divine Blood did not dare to push too far. The women of the Plain Maiden Palace defended against the men's attacks. Both sides cooperated seamlessly and tacitly. The experts of the Church of the Divine Blood had the advantage in numbers and power, but they could not defeat the people of the Stargazing Pavilion in a short time. Chu Li and the others were barely holding on. The experts of the Stargazing Pavilion sat on the ground and adjusted their breaths, seizing the time to recover. It was obvious that they would not win this battle, but they wanted to retreat in one piece. Bang, 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 bang. Su Yongning and Wei Wuwei clashed head-on. After a dozen more palm strikes, Su Yongning's face suddenly turned pale. The palm force of the blood jade palm was activated, and the blood in his body boiled. He staggered and hurriedly shot toward the people of the Prophecy Pavilion, wanting to enter the formation. Wei Wuwei sneered and suddenly appeared in front of Su Yongning in a flash, forcing him to fight head-on again. Bang, 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 bang. Su Yongning spat out a mouthful of blood after taking a few more palm strikes. Wei Wuwei said, "The pavilion master of the Prophecy Pavilion has become a lackey of the Stargazing Pavilion. What a joke. You shall stay here today." Su Yongning suddenly dodged his palm strike, and a beam of light from the sky fell on him. His body emitted a warm luster, like a piece of white jade. Under the light, his entire body was devoid of smoke and fire, and his eyes were calm and emotionless. The people of the Prophecy Pavilion were anxious. The pavilion master had been forced to use his secret skill, and things were not looking good. "Let's retreat," Li Xinghe shouted. Su Yongning moved like a ghost and instantly sent Wei Wuwei flying. Wei Wuwei was in the air, and he received a few more palm strikes from Su Yongning. His body kept flying, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the ravine. The people were busy fighting and retreating at the same time, maintaining the formation. Although there were many experts of the Church of the Divine Blood, they could not stop them. After a while, they arrived at the ravine's entrance, but they saw more than 20 experts of the Church of the Divine Blood standing there, staring at them coldly. Chapter 1338. Kill. More than 20 masters of the Divine Blood Church shouted and rushed forward. The situation suddenly turned bad. The four elders rushed towards Chu Li first, wanting to kill him together with purple eyebrows and crimson hand. The person who was entangled by purple eyebrows and crimson hand must be a powerful figure, so they wanted to kill him first before killing the others. Chu Li shouted, "Brother Li, don't hold back anymore." He was in an extremely sorry state as he dodged everyone's attacks. Very quickly, he suffered another palm strike and spat out another mouthful of blood. It looked like he was going to be seriously injured and might even lose his life. Li Xinghe sighed helplessly. He suddenly formed a seal with both hands, and a beam of starlight shot down from the sky onto his body. Blue light flashed around his body, and his pale face quickly regained its rosy color. His eyes were like lightning. He immediately turned into a ghost and passed through the protection of the people from the Pavilion of Prophecy. He appeared beside Chu Li and slapped Zi Mei's bloody hand away with one palm. Then he slapped the other 4 elders away and said, "Use your secret skill." "Are you going to use the secret skill now?" Chu Li asked helplessly. Li Xinghe nodded expressionlessly and sent 2 more experts from the Divine Blood Church flying like a ghost. "All right," Chu Li sighed. Bang! His body let out a muffled sound before it suddenly shrank. It was as if he had become another person. He was thin but strong. Then, his body seemed to be weightless as he floated in the air. It seemed slow but was incredibly fast. He arrived next to the Plain Maiden Palace and sent 4 experts from the Church of the Divine Blood flying. This caused the people from the Plain Maiden Palace to speed up their escape. Humph! Use the secret technique. Purple-browed Bloody Hand shouted in the air. His voice was like a clap of thunder, shaking everyone's blood and chi. While he was in the air, he had already used a secret skill. His entire body was glowing red, and his blood essence was burning like a raging flame. He shot toward Chu Li like lightning and entangled him again. The 2 of them were once again locked in a stalemate. Everyone from the Church of the Divine Blood began to unleash their secret techniques. The Plain Lady Palace's sword formation was on the verge of collapsing at any moment. The situation was becoming more and more unfavorable. After everyone from the Stargazing Pavilion used their secret techniques, their strength skyrocketed. With Li Xinghe leading the way, they led the people from the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries out of the valley. The people of the Plain Maiden Palace were at the back and were surrounded by the masters of the Divine Blood Church. It seemed that they had no hope of breaking through. Chu Li suddenly avoided the entanglement of purple eyebrows and bloody hand. He swung his arm and shot out more than 10 energy blades, which sent 4 Church of the Divine Blood Masters flying. The pressure on the Plain Maiden Palace was suddenly reduced, and they sped up their escape. Su Yin hurriedly shouted, "Brother Zhao, leave first. Don't worry about us." Chu Li scoffed. "You're still not going to use your secret skill at this point. The duration of our secret technique is too short. If we really can't hold on any longer, we'll use it again," Su Yin said. "It's still lacking. Leave first. Don't worry about us." Chu Li shook his head and said, "How can I leave him to die?" "Sigh. We have a way to protect ourselves," Su Yin said. Chu Li dodged the entanglement of purple brows and bloody hands while swinging his hands to shoot out energy blades. Once again, 2 masters from the Church of the Divine Blood were sent flying. His chi blade became sharper and sharper, like a real blade. However, it was not enough to kill the masters of the Divine Blood Church. The masters from the Church of the Divine Blood had the Bloody Garment divine power to protect their bodies, so their vigor was extremely strong. Moreover, the Bloody Garment divine power's power of vigor was peculiar as it could disperse inner energy. Hence, the power of the chi blade was greatly reduced once it entered their bodies. As long as it did not hit a vital point, it would not be fatal. However, even if it was not fatal, the chi blade that entered their bodies would still severely injure them. Hence, the masters from the Church of the Divine Blood were extremely fearful of him. Purple brows and bloody hands were furious. He felt ashamed that Chu Li had injured his fellow disciples so easily. His palm force became fiercer as he desperately channeled his inner energy. He swore to kill Chu Li. Seeing that Li Xinghe and the others had disappeared, Chu Li's face suddenly turned cold. He disappeared from where he was in a flash and appeared behind purple brows and bloody hands. 2 cold lights shot into his back and sent him flying. Then, he shot out energy blades continuously and sent a few more masters from the Church of the Divine Blood flying. The people from the Plain Maiden Palace took the opportunity to speed up and escape from the ravine. At this moment, more than 10 masters from the Church of the Divine Blood pounced on Chu Li. They wanted to kill him first. Su Yin quickly called out, "Brother Zhao, come in quickly." Chu Li said, "I'll go first to lure them away. You guys leave quickly." He glided away after he finished speaking. Su Yin stomped his feet and shook his head as he sighed. "This Brother Zhao," a tall and strong young man beside him said, "this Zhao Day is really chivalrous. I'm impressed." Sigh. Su Yin shook his head. "We'll be in trouble if we encounter Wei Wu Wei. We won't be that unlucky Will we? The tall and strong young man laughed. Wei Wu Wei is fighting Pavilion Leader Su. I'm afraid, Pavilion Leader, Su won't be able to escape. Su Yin shook his head. Wei Wu Wei is really too powerful. He's much more powerful than before. It seems like his martial arts has improved again. We're really too inferior to catch up to him. It's because he's a genius among geniuses. The tall and strong young man sighed helplessly. Comparisons are odious. Let's just focus on cultivating our martial arts. Chu Li flashed a few times like a ghost and avoided the pursuit of the masters from the Church of the Divine Blood. Then he activated the Great Void Light technique and flashed a few times before appearing in the depths of a dense forest. He sat on a treetop and observed the earth-shattering battle in the distance. Wei Wu Wei and Su Yongning were engaged in a fierce battle. After Su Yongning activated his secret skill, he was majestic and was suppressing Wei Wu Wei. Wei Wu Wei tenaciously clung to him, waiting for his secret skill to lose its effect before dealing with him. Their palm energies collided, causing strong winds to blow. The leaves around them were crushed into powder and fell to the ground. Sometimes, when the palm energy hit a tree, a crack could be heard and the pine tree would break. Pavilion Leader Su, you're going to die here today, Wei Wu Wei said in a deep voice. Su Yongning sneered and attacked with all his might. Wei Wu Wei fluttered and dodged while occasionally attacking. He shook his head and said, I really don't understand why you insist on being a lackey for Stargazing Pavilion. They don't even see you as humans. You're trying to sow discord, Su Yongning said coldly. You should shut up, young bishop, Wei Wu Wei said. Have you never thought of joining forces with the Church of the Divine Blood? Impossible. Su Yongning shook his head. Joining forces with you is like asking a tiger for its skin. Then you're following behind Stargazing Pavilion. Isn't that asking a tiger for its skin? Wei Wu Wei shook his head. Stargazing Pavilion doesn't see you as a threat at all. They use you as thugs, but we need you as strategists. It's clear which is more important. Su Yongning said, we can't betray Stargazing Pavilion because your skills are restrained by Stargazing Pavilion. Wei Wu Wei said, you don't have to worry. Leave this to us. We can lend you the Heavenly Star Jade Stamp. The Heavenly Star Jade Stamp. Su Yongning's expression changed. Wei Wu Wei said, Pavilion Leader Su, you know why Stargazing Pavilion wants to attack the Church of the Divine Blood's main altar, right? Hey, the Heavenly Star Jade Stamp. Su Yongning said. While they were talking, their hands did not stop moving. They were still trying to kill each other and were multitasking to find each other's flaws. Su Yongning wanted Wei Wu Wei to be distracted, and Wei Wu Wei also wanted to restrain Su Yongning first so that it would be easier to talk. Chapter 1339. He concealed his breath like a piece of deadwood. He was not afraid of them noticing and had great confidence in the scripture of life and death. He listened in the dark and could not help but admire Wei Wu Wei's intelligence. He saw through Su Yongning's thoughts, and every word hit the bottom of his heart. Su Yongning wanted the Prophecy Pavilion to enter the ranks of the 8 major sections. It would be best if they could surpass the Stargazing Pavilion. The Prophecy Pavilion had always been suppressed by the Stargazing Pavilion, acting as their little brother. In truth, the members of the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries weren't doing this willingly. Rather, they were forced by the situation. They were all proud and arrogant people with extraordinary aptitudes. How could they accept being suppressed like this? The longer they suppressed themselves, the stronger their desire to lift their eyebrows. Once they had the chance to become the master, they would not let it go. Su Yongning could not help but feel excited. Wei Wu Wei saw the change in his expression and persisted. The Prophecy Pavilion also has the ability to pry into the secrets of the heavens. It is not inferior to the Stargazing Pavilion. Unfortunately, because your martial arts are suppressed, you can only be suppressed. As a disciple of the Prophecy Pavilion, it is really frustrating. Oomph. Su Yongning snorted and glared at him. Wei Wu Wei said, as the leader, if you can overturn the suppression of the Stargazing Pavilion, you will be the greatest hero of the Prophecy Pavilion, comparable to the founder of the pavilion. Su Yongning frowned and did not speak. He also wanted to jump out of the fence of the stargazing pavilion. Unfortunately, the idea was good, but it was too difficult to do it. The strength of the stargazing pavilion was not known to outsiders. It cannot be seen from martial arts. Wei Wu Wei said, "There's no need to rush this matter. Let's have a good fight this time. If you win, I'll immediately escape. If you lose, I'll spare your life and let you think about it carefully." As he finished, he suddenly activated his secret skill. In an instant, moonlight fell on him. In Chu Li's omniscient mirror, the bright moonlight directly enveloped him and entered his body through his pores. His body was like a piece of flawless white jade, exuding a warm brilliance without a trace of blood-red light. He was well-read and knew that this was the sign of the bloody garment divine power. He could not help but shake his head. Wei Wu Wei was indeed a genius and was indeed better than him. It was said that the bloody garment divine technique was extremely difficult to cultivate, and it was almost impossible to cultivate it to perfection. However, Wei Wu Wei made the impossible possible, which was admirable. Wei Wu Wei instantly turned into a ball of shadow, like a wisp of smoke, seemingly slow, yet strangely fast. Pung pung. Su Yongning failed to dodge and instantly suffered 2 palm strikes. Su Yongning spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body was sent flying. Crack, crack, crack. 3 pine trees were broken by him in a single breath, and he continued to fly for more than 20 meters before landing heavily on the ground. He immediately fainted and lay there motionless. Wei Wu Wei revealed himself, shaking his head with a smile. He snorted in satisfaction. "You won't listen to me when I speak nicely. I can only give you a vicious blow. Humans are just cheap wretches." As he spoke, he strode to Su Yongning's side, bent down and reached out to feel around. Chu Li's expression changed slightly. He knew that he might be looking for starstones as well. He could not care less about hiding himself anymore. He appeared behind him in a flash and swung his arms violently. Chi-chi. 2 cold lights suddenly shot towards Wei Wu Wei's back. The flying daggers shot over without any obstruction, but it was a shadow that drilled out from behind a pine tree and fell to the ground and disappeared without a trace. Pung! Wei Wu Wei suddenly appeared in front of him, and a white jade-like palm slapped towards him. Chu Li disappeared in a flash, barely dodging it, and broke out in a cold sweat. He could feel the tyrannical force of this palm, and if he was hit by it, he would definitely be seriously injured. In a flash, he was 100 meters away. Huh! Wei Wu Wei was surprised and chased after him like a flash of light. Chu Li flashed again and was another 100 meters away. Wei Wu Wei did not believe it and chased after him relentlessly. In the blink of an eye, he had already chased for more than 10 miles. After Chu Li suddenly flashed, he did not appear again this time. Wei Wu Wei frowned and looked at the empty forest, faintly feeling that something was wrong. His expression suddenly changed, and he suddenly turned around, shooting in the original direction like a flash of light. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Su Yongning. He did not find anything wrong, and Su Yongning's body was untouched. He reached out to touch Su Yongning's chest, trying to find the starstone. He had heard of the famous starstone, and even if he could not use it, he could use it to blackmail Su Yongning or exchange it with Su Yongning for some treasure. Unfortunately, he could not find a starstone on Su Yongning's body, and he could not help but frown. Could it be that Su Yongning did not bring it, or that the guy just now had beaten him to it and snatched it? While he was in a daze, Su Yongning suddenly widened his eyes and hit his chest with his palm. Pung! Wei Wu Wei was hit. Wei Wu Wei's face instantly turned cold, and he directly hit him with his palm. Pung! Su Yongning fainted again. Wei Wu Wei touched his chest, and fortunately, he had the inner armor on, so this palm did not hurt him. He shook his head and looked at Su Yongning, feeling his pulse, and scoffed at him. With my temper, I would have killed you with 1 hit. He glared at Su Yongning and fluttered away. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to observe from the top of a mountain about 100 miles away, and when he saw this, he let out a long sigh of relief. He was not in a hurry to make a move, and when he saw that Wei Wu Wei was far away, he suddenly appeared beside Su Yongning, looked down at him, and shook his head. It was said that a gentleman does not take advantage of others when they are down, but it seemed that he could not be a gentleman. He thought to himself, and his palm was already pressed against Su Yongning's forehead, and his palm energy instantly shattered Su Yongning's head. Even a life-saving spirit pill could not save him. The star stone in his chest suddenly heated up and then turned cold. Chu Li looked down at his chest in shock. It seemed that the star stone had become one with Su Yongning, and they could sense each other. If he did not kill Su Yongning, even if he obtained the star stone, Su Yongning would still be able to track him down. He could not help but secretly shiver. It seemed that treasures were not so easy to obtain. If he had not been ruthless enough to kill Su Yongning first, his life would have been lost because of this star stone. After Su Yongning woke up, he would definitely be able to sense the star stone and then use it to find him and kill him. Last time, he was almost killed by a sneak attack, and fortunately, Sun Mingwei saved his life. This time, he almost suffered the same fate. Looking at Su Yongning, who was already completely dead, Chu Li shook his head and fluttered away. This debt was put on Wei Wu Wu. As soon as he left, Wei Wu Wu Wei suddenly appeared like a gust of wind and looked down to see that Su Yongning had already breathed his last. Wei Wu Wu Wei looked up to the sky and roared. He was extremely aggrieved. His martial arts was clearly superior, but he was played in circles. First, he lost the star stone, and then his own plan was ruined. What was more annoying was that he did not know who this guy was. After he roared twice, he disappeared again like a gust of wind. Chu Li hid in the distance. It seemed that this feud had been formed, and Wei Wu Wu Wei would definitely find trouble with him. He had to cultivate harder. Wei Wu Wu Wei's cultivation level was far higher than his, and if he really came looking for him, he would have no other choice but to escape. At first, he thought that only Sun Mingwei could suppress him, but now it seemed that he needed to work harder. The world was big, and there were indeed many masters. He decided to eat a few more sky-soaring pills, and then cultivate the Great Light Scripture. According to Sun Mingwei, once he obtained the complete scripture, his cultivation level would skyrocket. He reached into his chest and took out the star stone. Chapter 1340. This was a perfectly round blue bead that was the size of a thumb. Its color was muddy and gray, and if it was thrown on the ground, no one would pick it up. They wouldn't even give a glance. It was hard to believe that this was a star stone. If it were not for Chu Li's amazing intuition, he would not have treated this dull stone bead as a treasure. He would not have thought that it was the famous star stone. Moreover, this small bead was not found on Su Yongning's chest, but in one of his sleeves. It was as if he had picked it up casually and did not care about it all. It was easy to overlook it. He pinched the star stone and narrowed his eyes. Even though he was usually calm, he couldn't help but feel excited. After spending so much effort, he finally obtained this star stone. It could make the power of his heaven-peering technique even stronger, reaching the peak level. After learning the peering skill, he realized that it was not as powerful as he imagined, but he did not lose heart. He had been waiting for this star stone. As long as he had the star stone, it would be like adding wings to a tiger, and the peering skill would be able to unleash its power. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He activated the Heavenly Heart technique and began to use the peering skill. After a while, he frowned and opened his eyes. He looked down at the star stone. After using the peering skill for a while, nothing happened. Not only did the peering skill not strengthen, it weakened. His mind was in chaos as if the peering skill was suppressed. He could not see the fragments of fate or any images. He looked up and down at this ordinary-looking stone bead. Apart from its faint blue color, there was really no way to tell that it was a star stone. Could it be that he was mistaken? Was this something Su Yongning used to confuse him, and the Real Star Stone was hidden somewhere else? Unfortunately, he did not let Su Yongning wake up to prevent any more trouble. If he followed his previous plan, he would first cripple Su Yongning's martial arts, then wake him up and use the omniscient mirror to see through his mind. Finally, he would find the star stone and understand its secret. This time, he did not follow that plan. He only killed Su Yongning when he was unconscious because he was worried that Su Yongning would have a trump card. It would have been fine if it were anyone else, but Su Yongning was the pavilion master of the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries, a man of incredible foresight. Perhaps he had already prepared a trump card beforehand. As long as he woke up, even if he had to cripple his cultivation, he would still be able to turn the tables. He couldn't be careless when dealing with this kind of guy who could see through fate. He would rather not find the star stones than wake him up. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to find star stones, but his own life would also be in danger. After all, his cultivation was not as good as Su Yongning's. He touched the star stone for a long time, and finally nodded slowly. This was indeed a star stone. His strong intuition told him this, so there was no need to doubt it anymore. However, he did not find the specific usage of the star stone. Suddenly, a bold idea popped into his mind. He would impersonate Su Yongning and go to the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets. He immediately dispelled this thought. Impersonating an ordinary disciple was fine, but impersonating Su Yongning was hopeless. The Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries had far too many secrets. If he were to be exposed with just a few words, he would be courting death. Perhaps the star stone needed to be refined bit by bit through the Heavenly Heart Sutra. He frowned and pondered for a while. Eventually, he gave up. It was safest to turn into Su Hun first and slowly find out how to use the star stone. He let out a long sigh and placed the star stone on his chest. He pondered for a moment, and then appeared in the depths of a dense forest in a flash. The dense forest had turned into a battlefield. The people of the Plain Girl Palace were besieged by more than 30 masters of the Divine Blood Church. The 10 women of the Plain Girl Palace were floating, and their swords were like lightning. They turned into a silver waterfall and blocked the palm strength of the masters of the Divine Blood Church. The 10 men in the circle stabbed their swords from time to time, injuring the masters of the Divine Blood Church. However, these masters of the Divine Blood Church did not care after being injured. It was as if they had been bitten by mosquitoes, and they continued to attack. This was the advantage of the Bloody Garment divine power. Their bodies were full of vigor, and they could quickly stop the wounds after being injured. Their recovery ability was amazing. Moreover, their Bloody Garment divine power was a unique protective upstanding chi that could isolate the erosion of internal energy. If one's cultivation was not as strong as theirs, it would be useless even if they were hit by palm strength. The palm strength will be directly dissolved by the Bloody Garment divine power. Although one would be injured if one was stabbed by a weapon, as long as one's cultivation level was not higher than theirs, it would only be a flesh wound. As long as one was not stabbed in the vital parts, it did not matter how many injuries one suffered, as they would recover quickly. It was the energy of the Bloody Garment divine power that was consumed. Chu Li's light blade was terrifying to them, and they were deeply afraid of it. This was because Chu Li's inner energy was strong, and the flying blades often hit the vital parts. Even with the protection of the Bloody Garment divine power, it was still life-threatening. When Suyin saw Chu Li, he hurriedly said, "Brother Zhao, why are you back?" Chu Li suddenly appeared behind the masters of the Divine Blood Church and asked, "Can you do it?" "No problem. We're just playing with them." Suyin smiled. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. "Look at the time. Where are the Prophecy Pavilion and the others? They ran away a long time ago." Suyin said, "They ran faster than us. It's time to use the secret skill, right?" Chu Li's energy blades shot out and hit 4 masters of the Divine Blood Church. The pressure on the people of the Plain Girl Palace was instantly reduced, and they hurriedly walked out. Suyin said, "Our secret skill is different from theirs. We can't use it unless it's a critical moment." "Brother Zhao, you're amazing. You can escape from Wei Wuwei's pursuit." Chu Li shook his head and said, "Wei Wuwei is going after Pavilion Leader Su. He can't take care of me. You guys don't have to hold back. Leave as soon as possible." "All right, we'll listen to you, Brother Zhao." Suyin smiled. As soon as he finished speaking, he let out a long roar, and the long sword in his hand suddenly lit up. His speed suddenly increased, and like a flash of lightning, he instantly leaped out of the plain girl palace's sword formation and landed beside the masters of the Divine Blood Church. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The sound of the sword whistled, and it was invincible. None of the masters of the Divine Blood Church could actually block it. Most of the masters of the Divine Blood Church had already used their secret skill, and their speed and strength had greatly increased. However, in front of his fast sword, they seemed clumsy, and they could only watch helplessly as he stabbed them more than 10 times, and 10 masters fell. "Young Su, come back quickly," a middle-aged woman shouted. "I'm coming." Su-in responded, and once again stabbed a master of the Divine Blood Church. Suddenly, his face suddenly turned pale, and his movement stopped. The master of the Divine Blood Church had been stabbed in the chest, but his expression did not change, and he glared fiercely at Su-in. At the same time, he attacked with his blood jade palm, obviously wanting to injure both sides, but he did not expect that he would actually hit Su-in. Ding! Chu Li's flying blade hit the long sword, and the flying blade contained a huge force that could not be blocked. Su-in and the master of the Divine Blood Church were sent flying at the same time, and they also avoided this palm. Su-in was limp in the air, as if his bones had been pulled out, and a bitter smile appeared on his pale face. Chu Li floated over to catch him, and shook his head. "What secret skill is this? It's too overbearing. I owe you a life." Su-in shook his head and sighed, and smiled weakly. "This is my Overlord Sword technique. It's not bad, right? It's very powerful." Chu Li nodded. "No wonder you haven't used your secret skill." Chapter 1341. Young Master Zhao, please send young Su in, a lady said. With Su Yin's attacks and Chu Li's light blade, there were only 10 masters left from the Church of the Divine Blood. It was difficult for them to stop the people from Plain Maiden Palace. Their footsteps were light, as if they were gliding with the wind. They were extremely fast. Chu Li disappeared from the spot and appeared among them in the next moment. Su-in struggled to stand, but Chu Li activated his inner energy to perform his light body technique. He said helplessly, "I'm useless now. This is the price of using the secret skill. Let's not stay here anymore. Let's start using the secret skill and get rid of them quickly." "I'll do it. It's time." Another 2 people performed the secret skill at the same time. Suddenly, the sword light shone brightly and pounced on the remaining 10 masters from the Church of the Divine Blood. The masters from the Church of the Divine Blood also performed the secret skill, but their secret skill was not as overbearing as Su Yin's. It was either succeed or die, so the power of the secret skill was stronger. In the blink of an eye, another 6 people were stabbed. Another 2 men performed the Overlord Sword secret skill, and the rest were stabbed. However, the people from Plain Maiden Palace were not happy. Instead, they held up the man who was paralyzed after performing the secret skill. They performed their light body technique and fled in a panic. Their speed was extremely fast, and they wanted to go back in the blink of an eye. Under such circumstances, if they were to be besieged again, it would be difficult to predict their fate. Chu Li followed closely behind them. Su-in tried hard to catch his breath and smiled. Fortunately, Brother Zhao came to help. Chu Li shook his head. "You guys could have escaped even if I didn't come. I didn't expect your secret skill to be so powerful. Overlord Sword technique, what a technique. If you want to learn it, we'll teach it to you." Su-in smiled. Chu Li smiled. "Forget it. I don't have the courage to use it. You'll lose your life at a critical moment. Why don't you give it a try?" Su-in said, "Its power is still amazing. It might save your life." Chu Li smiled and shook his head. He didn't want to learn the Hegemin Sword secret technique because it was too extreme. Moreover, he had the Great Void Brightness technique and God's feet, so he could avoid any danger. If he couldn't win, he would run. Of the 36 stratagems, fleeing was the best. The difference between the Great Void Illumination technique and the God's Limbs was the Inner Force technique. Coincidentally, his inner force was endless under the support of the Life and Death scripture. This could be said to be the most suitable secret technique for him and was even better than the God's Limbs. The God's feet consumed mental energy. Although his mental energy was strong, it wasn't limitless. It was easier to use the Great Void Illumination art. This is really an injustice. Suyin shook her head and said, I originally thought that I could gain some benefits by following the stargazing pavilion, but I never expected that I would only suffer losses. How aggrieved. There are masters in the Church of the Divine Blood. Chu Li sighed. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to hide it from the stargazing pavilion. The stargazing pavilion has great foresight, but no matter how great their foresight is, their power will be greatly reduced once they are guarded against. Su Yin smiled bitterly. Li Xinghe's stargazing art is top-notch, but didn't he still fall to Wei Wuwei? It might have something to do with the star jade stamp, Chu Li said. After he knew about the heavenly star jade stamp, he vaguely felt that it was also a treasure. Since it was so powerful, it might be able to suppress the stargazing art of the stargazing pavilion. When the stargazing art was deducing, it might be blocked by the heavenly star jade stamp. Otherwise, with Li Xinghe's stargazing art, he would definitely be able to predict Wei Wuwei's sneak attack. Not being able to dodge meant that Wei Wuwei's sneak attack had been concealed. It was said that the stargazing art was a level higher than the heaven-peering art. No ordinary treasure could fool it. It was very likely that it was the heavenly star jade stamp. He was getting more and more curious about the heavenly star jade stamp. Suddenly, a thought struck him. What was the relationship between the heavenly star jade stamp and the star stone? He vaguely felt that there must be a connection between the two. Heavenly star jade stamp. Humph, the stargazing pavilion wants it, but it won't be that easy. Su Yin shook her head. The Divine Blood Church knows that they want it, but they would rather let it rot than give it to the stargazing pavilion. Actually, they can use the Heaven Star Jade stamp to exchange for a lot of good things, said a young man beside him. Su Yin gave him a sidelong glance. Short-sighted. If the stargazing pavilion gets the Heaven Star Jade stamp, they'll definitely advance by leaps and bounds. Who would do such a thing? Even if they advance by leaps and bounds, can they beat the Goddess Attraction Mountain? The young man said disapprovingly. This young man was chubby and round. He looked very festive, but he wasn't handsome at all. None of the 10 sons-in-law from the Plain Maiden Palace had outstanding looks. If Su Yin had not been disfigured, he would have been the most handsome. Once the stargazing pavilion gets the heavenly star jade stamp, who knows how strong they'll become. It's already scary enough. Su Yin shook his head. Fortunately, they're decent and not as overbearing as the Divine Blood Church. We've gained too little this time. It'd be great if we could break into the Sutra Pavilion, the chubby young man said with a smile. You're always dreaming, Su Yin said. I've never counted on it. How can the Sutra Pavilion not have any tricks up its sleeves? If it's so easy to rob, the Divine Blood Church would have been done for a long time. Moreover, it's hard to say if the church leader of the Divine Blood Church has really gone mad. As soon as he said this, everyone's expression changed. If Wei Wuwei is this powerful, how powerful would the church leader of the Divine Blood Church be? The chubby young man sighed. Su Yin nodded slowly with a serious expression. You're here. Suddenly, a sneer was heard. Wei Wuwei appeared in the middle of the opposite path like a ghost. They were sprinting along a small path. When they saw Wei Wuwei appear, they stopped abruptly with a stern look on their faces. Chu Li frowned and looked at him. Wei Wuwei's cold gaze swept across everyone and landed on Chu Li. It's you, isn't it? Chu Li frowned. What do you mean? You can't hide from my instincts. You're the first and last person to dare to trick me. Wei Wuwei. Die. Wei Wuwei scoffed and appeared in front of Chu Li in a flash. Chu Li disappeared in a flash. Wei Wuwei also disappeared in a flash. When Chu Li appeared, he slapped down with his palm. His palm was as white as jade and flawless, attracting everyone's attention. Chu Li scoffed and swung both of his hands. Ding ding. With 2 clear sounds, the 2 blades were slapped away by the jade palm. Chu Li frowned. He didn't expect Wei Wuwei's blood jade palm to be at such a level that it could block flying blades. He didn't show it before. He then realized something. The omniscient mirror saw that Wei Wuwei's palm was wearing a thin glove. There was nothing strange about it on the surface. In addition, his palm was as white as jade, so it was even harder to see the almost transparent glove. Bang! Wei Wuwei's palms collided with Chu Li's fists. Chu Li was instantly sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood in the air and disappeared in a flash. Wei Wuwei sneered. Still trying to run? His figure became blurry and turned into a shadow. In the end, the shadow faded into nothingness and disappeared. Brother Zhao is in big trouble. Su Yin gritted his teeth and shook his head. The chubby young man sighed. I'm afraid it doesn't bode well for him. Su Yin glared at him and scoffed. Heaven helps a good man, no problem. Chapter 1342. Chu Li kept casting the void light technique. His speed was as fast as lightning, and he traveled about a mile in an instant. The void light technique could cross the void and travel extremely far in an instant, but it would consume a large amount of inner energy. He did not dare to take the risk. Once his inner energy was consumed, it would take some time to recover. It could not be replenished in an instant. If Wei Wuwei appeared at this time, he would be in danger. Wei Wuwei had a tracking skill, and he followed him closely. Even if Chu Li used the void light technique, he could not shake him off. Wei Wuwei's identity was similar to Sun Mingyue's, and they were in the Church of the Divine Blood. It was not surprising that he knew skills that others did not know. Although Chu Li had a headache, he was not anxious. Wei Wuwei's secret skill also consumed a large amount of inner energy. At this rate, it would depend on who could last longer. Chu Li had the life and death scripture, so he was very confident. Every time he teleported, he would travel 1 mile, then 2 miles, then 3 miles. Chu Li kept trying to figure out how much inner energy he could consume and replenish it in time to prevent a sneak attack. In the end, he used 5 miles every time, which was just right. Wei Wuwei was like a shadow, faintly visible. He used a light body technique that was similar to imminent skyline. In addition, Chu Li had his inner energy in his body, so he could clearly sense it. Even if he ran far away, he could still catch up. He had a smile on his face, full of confidence. The void light technique was indeed amazing. Wei Wuwei intercepted Chu Li in advance twice, but his prediction was broken by Chu Li. He could only chase after him and could not predict a sneak attack. Ah! Wei Wuwei roared and shouted, Brat, who are you? His voice was like thunder, shaking Chu Li's body. His blood surged, and he quickly stopped. The two were 10 meters apart. Chu Li looked at him deeply, shook his head, and ignored him. He disappeared again, but this time, he suddenly appeared 100 miles away. He wanted to test if Wei Wuwei could still catch up, and how far he needed to get rid of Wei Wuwei's pursuit. He appeared 100 miles away, and under the activation of the life and death scripture, pure spiritual energy surged in from all directions. The degree of purity was comparable to inner energy. After the heavenly heart art improved, the life and death scripture improved and became so pure, allowing his inner energy to recover extremely quickly. However, no matter how pure the spiritual energy was, replenishing the great void brightness technique still required the blink of an eye. An expert like Wei Wuwei could kill him many times in the blink of an eye. He felt that Wei Wuwei was probably the same as Sun Mingyue. The Divine Blood Church had a secret technique that allowed them to pass on their cultivation. Otherwise, Wei Wuwei's aptitude would be too shocking. If the Divine Blood Church had such a master, what about the other 7 sects? He sighed to himself. Li Xinghe's star-gazing art was incomparably profound. If it wasn't for his heavenly heart art being sufficiently profound, he wouldn't have been able to escape from Li Xinghe's schemes. The peak experts of the Plain Maiden Palace had yet to appear. According to Su Yin, there was also a genius disciple whose talent wasn't inferior to Wei Wuwei. His sleeves suddenly fluttered, and Wei Wuwei suddenly appeared behind him. Wei Wuwei silently struck out with his palm. Chu Li took a step forward and dodged it easily. He turned his head and frowned. He didn't expect Wei Wuwei to be able to track him from 100 miles away. This Wei Wuwei was indeed powerful. Could it be because of the blood jade palm inner force in his body? The earth matrix and reincarnation scripture was constantly wearing down this inner force. However, Wei Wuwei had almost perfected the blood jade palm. It was so pure that it was almost tangible. It was extremely difficult to convert it. He sighed to himself. The Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture needed to be improved. As his opponents became stronger, the power of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture started to show its inadequacies. It was difficult to convert such an extremely pure inner force. Unfortunately, the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture was profound and unpredictable. Even with the experience of turning life and death with the life and death scripture, he only had a shallow understanding of the life and death scripture. He needed a deeper understanding to advance to the next level. Great light body technique. Wei Wuwei scoffed and struck out with his palm again. Chu Li disappeared in a flash and began to flee again. He wanted to lure Wei Wuwei away and prevent him from dealing with the people of the star-gazing pavilion and the Plain Maiden Palace. Otherwise, if there were any casualties, it would be his responsibility. As expected, Li Xinghe had great foresight. He clearly knew that Chu Li's cultivation level was inferior to Wei Wuwei's, but he still left Chu Li to deal with him. It seemed that he had calculated that Chu Li could hold Wei Wuwei back. Looks like I have to use my true abilities. Wei Wuwei scoffed, and his eyes suddenly lost focus. Then, a beam of light from the sky fell on him. Freeze! A loud shout rang out like a bolt of thunder from the clear sky. Chu Li's omniscient mirror saw a blood-red light shoot out of Wei Wuwei's mouth and appear in front of him. He wanted to avoid it, but he couldn't use the great void light or God's limbs in time. As the red light shone on his body, the blood energy around him froze as if he had turned into a statue. Even his thoughts were frozen. Mumami, the Mahavarokana in the void of his mind, suddenly opened his eyes with a calm gaze. Chu Li's thoughts immediately started working again. When he saw Wei Wuwei's white, jade-like, right palm imprint on his chest, he instantly disappeared and barely avoided the palm. God's limbs had finally activated at the most crucial moment and saved his life. If this white jade palm were to land again, he would have lost more than half of his life. Wei Wuwei tilted his head and looked in the direction where Chu Li disappeared. The smile on his face grew wider. Good lad, you're quite good at escaping. He focused his senses but could not find that blood jade palm force. The blood energy sensing technique that he had always relied on had failed. He could not catch up to it. What the hell is this lad dead? Wei Wuwei frowned and muttered to himself. He shook his head and said, "That's a pity. I wanted to catch him and get along with him for a while. I wanted to let him know what it means to live a life worse than death." Chu Li sat in a forest and was surrounded by a protective formation. After activating God's limbs, he immediately returned to the main road between Stargazing Pavilion and Prophecy Pavilion. The formation that he had set up earlier was still there, so he hid in it. He wanted to test if the formation could block Wei Wuwei's senses. He sat cross-legged on a tree and adjusted his breathing before using the cloud-slashing power to devour the blood jade palm. He had a lingering fear when he thought of the scene earlier. He had almost fallen into Wei Wuwei's hands. He did not know what kind of mystical technique Wei Wuwei had used to make it harder to defend against a hidden weapon. He used all of his abilities, and in one breath, he ground away the palm energy of the blood jade palm. Finally, he heaved a sigh of relief, and his mind became clear. It was as though the eyes hidden in the dark had disappeared, and Wei Wuwei could no longer sense him. He thought about it, and suddenly disappeared. He appeared near the people from Stargazing Pavilion and realized that they were flying under the protection of the masters from Prophecy Pavilion. They were not entangled by the masters from the Church of the Divine Blood. He then appeared near the masters from Plain Maiden Palace. They were safe and had gotten rid of the masters from the Church of the Divine Blood. Chu Li finally pretended to catch up with the masters from Stargazing Pavilion. His face was as pale as a sheet. Li Xinghe was carried on the back of an elder. He was relieved to see Chu Li struggling to catch up. "Brother Zhao, you're all right." Chu Li smiled bitterly. "This Wei Wuwei is too powerful. He almost caught up to me. Only your light body technique could get rid of him." Li Xinghe smiled. "It's all thanks to you this time." Chu Li shook his head. "The Church of the Divine Blood is indeed powerful." Li Xinghe nodded slowly. "I've gotten some information. Chapter 1343. It turned out that Li Xinghe was not confident that he would succeed this time. Instead, he was just testing the Divine Blood Church. His expression did not change, but he was secretly frowning. The way the stargazing pavilion handled things was really bold. The Church of the Divine Blood had just barged in without fear. Could it be that they had something up their sleeves? What he was even more puzzled about was why the stargazing pavilion had done this. Were they not afraid that the Tianji Pavilion and the Plain Maiden Palace would turn against each other? It would be fine if they really had a chance to obtain the secret manual, but they just had to make the two sects risk their lives for the sake of probing. This was no different from deceiving them. Were they not afraid that the two sects would secretly join hands to deal with them? Chu Li was puzzled, but he did not ask about it. He would find out in the future. Brother Zhao, how did you escape from Wei Wuwei's pursuit? Li Xinghe was lying on the back of an old man. His face was pale and his voice was weak, but he looked at Chu Li with great interest. The people around him also looked at Chu Li curiously. They all knew how powerful Wei Wuwei was. He was like a ghost or a god that could not be defeated. This Zhao De was truly a powerful person. It was no wonder that the stargazing pavilion wanted him to help them. Chu Li shook his head and said, "It's the light body technique that the saint taught me. I'm just running for my life. I'm no match for Wei Wuwei at all. This person's cultivation level is truly terrifying. This is a gift from the heavens. Others can't be envious." Li Xinghe said, "Many experts have died in his hands. You should be proud to be able to escape from him." Chu Li smiled bitterly. "I almost lost my life. Brother Zhao, you don't have a short life. Don't worry." Li Xinghe smiled and said, "Your luck will be very good." Chu Li smiled. Could it be that Brother Zhao was the one who predicted it? Of course. Li Xinghe nodded with certainty. "Senior Brother Zhao, your fate is extremely good. Your future is boundless." Chu Li could not help but laugh. "My future is boundless. I'm already at the top now. That might not be the case." Li Xinghe smiled. "Don't you think our Fu dynasty's martial world is more interesting and exciting?" Chu Li said, "It's more dangerous." Li Xinghe smiled and said, "It's precisely because of the danger that it's exciting. With your skills, it's truly a waste for you to stay in the Li dynasty. It's really boring to meet a rare opponent, and it'll be hard for you to improve your martial arts." Chu Li frowned and remained silent. Li Xinghe said, "You won't be motivated without an opponent. Now that you've come to the Fu dynasty with Wei Wuwei around, why aren't you working hard?" Chu Li sighed and shook his head. "Thank you for thinking so highly of me, Brother Li. I'm indebted to the saint, so I can't leave." "All right, take your time to think about it." Li Xinghe smiled and said, "You should know that the path of martial arts is as vast as the ocean. It'll be hard for you to achieve anything great if you stay in the Great Li." Chu Li remained silent. Seeing that Chu Li was not tempted, Li Xinghe sighed inwardly. This was probably the power of a beauty. The saint of the Holy Church of Light had an unparalleled beauty, so it was inevitable for Zhao De to be infatuated with her. It seemed like he would have to use something good to tempt him. The Divine Light Basilica was brightly lit. Chu Li sat on the armchair and talked to Sun Mingwei, who was opposite him. Sun Mingwei was dressed in a robe as white as snow. Her white veil had been removed, revealing her beautiful face. She was sitting in the armchair opposite Chu Li. Her bright eyes were fixed on him as she listened to his narration attentively. Her bright eyes sparkled from time to time. Being stared at by her bright eyes, Chu Li's heart beat faster. Xiao Qi's face flashed in his mind as he suppressed his inexplicable thoughts. "Wei Wuwei." Sun Mingwei frowned and muttered, "It seems like he's really powerful." Chu Li slowly said, "You must be careful if you encounter him, Saint. His martial arts is truly unfathomable. If it wasn't for the divine void light technique, I definitely wouldn't have been able to escape." Sun Mingwei said, "That roar of his must be the blood howl. He condenses his blood essence into his voice, making it ferocious and overbearing. You were lucky to escape when you weren't on guard. Run the next time you see him." Chu Li replied, "I'll have to try. As far as I know, the Church of the Divine Blood's inheritance has its own mystery. That's why he has such a profound skill. Once the bloody garment divine power is cultivated to perfection, one's control over one's blood essence is astonishing. One can even manipulate one's opponent's blood essence. It's truly miraculous. Sun Mingyue shook her head and said, "It seems like he hasn't perfected it. Otherwise, you'd really be dead. He's a person who views human life as worthless. Don't think that you'll be lucky." Chu Li frowned and nodded. Sun Mingyue sighed. "It's really troublesome this time. We've provoked Wei Wuwei. He'll come for us sooner or later. We'll deal with it when the time comes." Chu Li said, "I'll have to go into isolated cultivation again." "Yes, you have to cultivate in isolation." Sun Mingyue nodded. "Otherwise, you'll see that Wei Wuwei is defenseless. Moreover, you should cultivate the last part of the Great Light Scripture." Chu Li said, "I'm going to the Stargazing Pavilion to pick some treasures tomorrow. I wonder what I should pick." Sun Mingyue was more knowledgeable. She might know what treasures were in the Stargazing Pavilion. Sun Mingyue muttered, "Everything in the Stargazing Pavilion is good stuff. Just pick one that you like. It won't be too bad." Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingyue said, "Go ahead. You can rest there for a while. The star chart is full of mysteries. Be thick-skinned and look at it for a few days. They'll agree on account of your hard work." Chu Li Fist saluted and suddenly disappeared. He cast the divine void light technique and left the Great Light Peak. Li Xinghe had mostly recovered after one night. His complexion was rosy again. He went to the cave. Chu Li was in early morning and brought him to another cave. "This is the treasure cave." Li Xinghe pointed at the low cave in front of him and said with a smile, "The rare items that we've picked up are stored here. They're all valuable items. Some of them might look like ordinary stones, but they're actually rare stones. It'll depend on your eyesight and luck if you haven't been recognized by the others." Chu Li nodded. Li Xinghe reached out and patted the mossy wall beside the cave a few times. Then, with a muffled rumble, the stone door opened. Li Xinghe went in first, and Chu Li followed him into the cave. There were luminous pearls embedded in the cave, illuminating it brightly and gently. After walking more than 10 steps, shelves began to be placed on both sides of the passage. There were shelves on both sides of the passage, each with oddly shaped items on them. There were stones, branches, weapons, and remnants of scrolls. However, the words on the scrolls were strange and did not look like modern writing. Chu Li continued to walk in. The shelves on both sides of the passage were connected to each other. There were fruit pits, rings, daggers, short swords, long swords, armor, and even some strange weapons. There were even flowers and plants in pots. He looked around as he walked. By the time he reached the end of the passage, he was already more than 200 meters away. 200 meters meant that there were more than 400 meters of wooden shelves. There were all kinds of items, and they were all-inclusive. Chu Li could not take his eyes off them, let alone pick a good one. Li Xinghe looked proud when he saw Chu Li's expression. "Brother Zhao, although the items here are oddly shaped, they're all good items. Otherwise, we wouldn't have kept them here." Chu Li nodded. "In my opinion, Brother Zhao, you could just pick any one of them." Li Xinghe smiled. "It'll be enough for you to smile until you wake up at home." Chu Li shook his head and started walking again. Finally, he stopped on a charcoal-like withered tree branch and frowned as if he was deep in thought. "Why, Brother Zhao, are you interested in this piece of wood?" Li Xinghe smiled. "But this piece of wood does have some history." Chu Li pretended to listen attentively. Chapter 1344. I picked this piece of wood up myself. Li Xinghe pointed at the withered wood and shook his head with a sigh. "Don't be fooled by its ordinary appearance. It's an item that survived the lightning strike." Chu Li reached out and picked it up to examine it carefully. It was like a piece of charcoal. It was really inconspicuous. Li Xinghe said, "Back when I reached the 10th level of the star-gazing art, heavenly lightning descended and struck the towering tree beside me. The tree was reduced to ashes, and only this piece of wood was left." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. "Lightning from the sky?" Li Xinghe nodded slowly and said, "Yes, the star-gazing art is a technique to peer into the heavens. It's feared by the heavens, so it naturally sent down lightning as a warning." Chu Li smiled. Where's the heavenly heart technique? Yes. Li Xinghe nodded. I know that the Holy Church of Light has obtained the heavenly heart technique. Yes. Chu Li said, I've also cultivated it, but I don't think there's anything special about it. That's because your cultivation level isn't high enough. Li Xinghe shook his head and said, the heavenly heart art also requires talent. Without sufficient talent, it's useless even if you cultivate it your entire life. You won't be able to break through to the 9th level. Chu Li asked, if that's the case, will there be divine thunder when I master the 9th level? Yes. Li Xinghe grinned. Scary, right? That will depend on your ability. If you can calculate the location of the lightning, you will naturally be able to avoid it. If you can't, then you won't be able to withstand the might of the heavens. Chu Li nodded slowly and asked, is there no other way to avoid this sky thunder? No. Li Xinghe said, the mysteries of the heavens are hard to conceal and there's nowhere to hide. One can only rely on one's own abilities. This piece of wood contains the pure power of heavenly thunder. It's greatly beneficial for comprehending the might of the heavens. Chu Li thought about it for a while before he shook his head and left. Li Xinghe said in disappointment, this is good stuff. Chu Li strolled away and stopped in front of a broken string of prayer beads. There were only 6 beads left on the string. They were dusty and looked as if they were strung together by stones that were randomly picked up from the ground. The string of beads had been worn down to the point that there was only a thin thread left, and it looked like it could break at any time. Seeing this, no one dared to touch the string of beads. Otherwise, the string would be broken. This also has its origins, Li Xinghe said. Chu Li turned to look at him and smiled. Don't tell me this is a Buddhist bead from an eminent monk. That's not necessarily the case. Li Xinghe said, I picked it up at the foot of a mountain when I passed by it during one of my travels. However, you know that there are no monks in the Fu dynasty. This thing must have been around for many years. No matter what, it's an antique. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Ever since the spirit beasts entered Shirwan Hills, the Fu dynasty had banished the Buddhist sects and banished them to the Li dynasty, the Ji dynasty, and the other 4 countries. The Buddhist sects no longer appeared in the central Fu dynasty, so there should be no more Buddhist prayer beads. This Buddhist prayer bead was at least 1,000 years old. Being able to preserve it until now, it was indeed an antique. Chu Li shook his head. So what if it's an antique? It has no spiritual energy at all. It's just an ordinary stone. That might not be the case. Li Xinghe shook his head and said, I wouldn't have picked it up if it were that simple. After so many years, even the toughest stone would have decayed. Yet, this thing is perfectly intact. Chu Li said, it could also be left behind by a monk who snuck into the Fu dynasty. Brotherly, do you also think that these prayer beads are mysterious? This. Li Xinghe hesitated. Chu Li shook his head and said, it looks quite interesting. Let's take this. Do you really want this? Li Xinghe looked at him doubtfully and then at the broken prayer beads. He smiled and said, if you're not sure, you can change to another one. I can't let you come here for nothing. There's still a treasure sword and a secret manual over there. Although they're incomplete, they're still very powerful. Chu Li smiled. I don't lack treasure swords or secret manuals. I'll try my luck and see what kind of treasure this is. It might really be an antique from 1,000 years ago. Besides, the Buddhist sects also talk about karma. It's fate that we've encountered it here today. Since Brother Zhao has made up your mind, I won't try to persuade you anymore, Li Xinghe said with a smile. Chu Li reached out and gently picked up the prayer beads. He did not feel anything strange when he touched them. They were just like the most ordinary stones. There was a reason why he picked up the prayer beads. Through the omniscient mirror, the string of prayer beads was like a cloud of mist. He could not see through it no matter how hard he tried. Furthermore, a thought flashed through his mind. He vaguely felt that this string of prayer beads was very important to him, which was why he took it. I think this is a star stone, Chu Li said. Li Xinghe was stunned. He could not help but laugh. A star stone, Chu Li said, this string of prayer beads gives me a feeling of vastness. It should be a star stone. Li Xinghe chuckled and shook his head. Brother Zhao, this is definitely not a star stone. That might not be the case. Chu Li shook his head. The star stone is a legendary item. No one has seen it before. I've seen a star stone before. Li Xing has said, it doesn't look like this. It said that the star stone can enhance the power of the stargazing technique and the heavenly heart technique. Is that true? Chu Li asked. Indeed, Li Xing has said, with the star stone, one's understanding of heaven and earth will deepen. It'll be easier to activate the heaven-peering skill and the stargazing technique. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to see it. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. Li Xing has smiled. It seems like there's only one star stone in this world. It's in Pavilion Master Su's possession. No one else has seen it. Chu Li said, "Oh right, did you find Pavilion Master Su?" "No." Li Xing has sighed and shook his head. The odds are against him. I never thought that Pavilion Master Su would die in the hands of the Church of the Divine Blood. It's truly a sin. I don't know how to face the Prophecy Pavilion. Chu Li said, Pavilion Master Su's cultivation level is profound. How could he have lost his life? Li Xinghe frowned and sighed. I didn't calculate this back then. It's truly a mistake. Wei Wuwei's life is connected to the Outland. It's beyond the detection of the stargazing technique. Therefore, Pavilion Master Su must have been killed by Wei Wuwei. Wei Wuwei, Chu Li sighed. It's hard to say if Pavilion Master Su could have won if he attacked. However, he should have been able to escape, right? I'm afraid I was too careless. Li Xinghe shook his head. It's useless to talk about this. Pavilion Master Su has passed away, and the Prophecy Pavilion has suffered a heavy blow. Sigh. He shook his head and sighed. Chu Li knew that he was putting on an act. He did not feel guilty at all. Instead, he might have done it on purpose. The rise of the Prophecy Pavilion threatened the position of the Stargazing Pavilion. Therefore, the attack on the Church of the Divine Blood this time required the Prophecy Pavilion to send out so many masters. Su Yongning had even personally participated. Logically speaking, Su Yongning would not have come personally. I'm afraid that Star Stone has been taken by Wei Wuwei. Chu Li lamented. What a pity. Li Xinghe sneered. It's useless even if he went. Chu Li said, Wei Wuwei might have cultivated the Heavenly Heart technique or the Stargazing technique. Perhaps the Star Stone could help him in his cultivation. The Star Stone could help him in his cultivation? Li Xinghe laughed and shook his head. Perhaps everyone thinks that the Star Stone can help the cultivation of the Heavenly Heart technique and the Stargazing technique. Chu Li nodded. Of course. Otherwise, how could it be considered a treasure? Chapter 1345. Chu Li looked at him in astonishment. Li Xinghe grinned. You didn't expect this, did you? The world is full of wonders, and those treasures are often beyond the imagination of ordinary people. The Star Stone is one of the most extraordinary of them all. If it wasn't our stargazing pavilion, it would be useless even if someone obtained the Star Stone. Chu Li smiled. Could it be that the Star Stone belongs to your stargazing pavilion? Li Xinghe shook his head. Our stargazing pavilion has a secret book that records the Star Stone. Unfortunately, the disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion weren't as lucky and failed to find the Star Stone after much effort. In the end, it was obtained by a disciple of the Prophecy Pavilion. This is truly, Chu Li said, this is also the wonder of fate. That's right. Li Xinghe said, the Prophecy Pavilion managed to gain a foothold because they obtained the Star Stone. They gradually straightened their backs and reached the strength they have today. Is the Star Stone really that magical? Chu Li smiled. It allowed the Prophecy Pavilion to gain a foothold. The Star Stone suppresses the cultivation of the Heavenly Heart technique. Li Xinghe sighed. But it stimulates the might of the peering heaven skill. As long as one holds the Star Stone and uses the peering heaven skill, it will rise to a new level. Its might is not inferior to our stargazing technique. It's truly magical. If it's really that powerful, how could Pavilion Leader Su have died? Chu Li shook his head and smiled. It can't seek fortune and avoid calamity. It's a treasure that can't even protect itself. It's not a true treasure and is instead an inauspicious item. Brother Zhao, you're right. Li Xing has said, but it's truly a pity that the Star Stone will disappear from now on. Chu Li was stunned. Li Xinghe said, the Star Stone needs to be nourished. Without the nourishment of the heavenly heart technique, it's just a stone. It's useless even if Wei Wuwei obtained it, but he couldn't return it to anyone either. He could only shelve it and remain silent. As time passes, it will eventually be forgotten by people and worn away with time. That's a pity. Chu Li shook his head. But Wei Wuwei won't exchange it unless he can snatch it. Unfortunately, it's not easy to snatch something from Wei Wuwei's hands. Yeah, it's not easy. Li Xinghe sighed with a solemn expression. He was well aware of how powerful Wei Wuwei was. Not only did he have extraordinary martial arts, but his actions were also unpredictable, making it difficult for others to grasp his path and guard against him. He was most afraid of Wei Wuwei and had always wanted to get rid of him. Chu Li said, "Is there no way to cure Wei Wuwei? No one can restrain the martial arts of the Divine Blood Church. The power of the Bloody Garment Divine Art is astonishing." Li Xinghe replied, "It's an independent entity. The only thing it can restrain is the sound assassination art. The Jade Truth Temple is proficient in the sound assassination art, but they rarely leave the mountain." Chu Li frowned. The Church of the Divine Blood is so overbearing, but they didn't take the initiative to deal with the Jade Truth Temple. They can't afford to offend the Jade Truth Temple. Li Xinghe shook his head and said, "Moreover, the Church of the Divine Blood and the Jade Truth Temple have a deep relationship. There are very few conflicts between them." "If that's the case," Chu Li said, "in that case, no one can defeat the Church of the Divine Blood. The Goddess Attraction Mountain can." Li Xinghe smiled. The Goddess Attraction Mountain is unique and unrivaled. It's not difficult for them to deal with the Church of the Divine Blood, but they won't do anything. The masters of the Goddess Attraction Mountain can't be bothered with the disturbances of the mortal world. The Goddess Attraction Mountain, Chu Li sighed. "I heard that the dragon taming technique is extremely powerful. It's the world's #1 mystical technique. Of course, the dragon taming technique is powerful." Li Xinghe nodded. "Unfortunately, there are very few people who can cultivate the dragon taming technique." "What qualities do I need to cultivate the dragon taming technique?" Chu Li asked. "Does the stargazing pavilion have the dragon taming technique?" Li Xinghe smiled. "Could it be that Brother Zhao wants to cultivate the dragon taming technique?" "Of course." Chu Li nodded. "How can I not be curious about such a mystical technique? Wouldn't I have wasted my life if I didn't cultivate it? Looks like you're a martial arts fanatic, Brother Zhao." Li Xinghe smiled. "However, the cultivation of the dragon taming technique requires not only a strong body, but also a strong soul energy. If you want to cultivate the dragon taming technique, you'll have to perfect the stargazing pavilion first to have a glimmer of hope." "What about the heavenly heart technique?" Chu Li asked. "At the very least, it has to be perfect." Li Xinghe said, "This is only a sliver of chance. As for whether or not one can cultivate the art of dragon control, it will depend on other aptitudes. In short, there are very few disciples on the Immortal Attraction Mountain. It's not without reason that only one appears in 100 years." Chu Li nodded slowly and played with the prayer beads. He shook his head and said, "The dragon taming technique. What a pity. I see that Brother Zhao is a genius. You might be able to cultivate the art of dragon control. Unfortunately, the art of dragon control is a secret of Goddess Attraction Mountain." Li Xinghe smiled and said, "If you really don't want to give up, cultivate the heavenly heart art to perfection. Then go to Immortal Attraction Mountain. There might be a chance to cultivate the dragon control art there." The heavenly heart technique has been perfected. Chu Li could not help but laugh. "Since it's done, I'll take my leave first, Brother Li. Brother Zhao, don't worry." Li Xinghe quickly waved his hand and walked out. As he walked, he said, "If we attack the Divine Blood Church again, I hope Brother Zhao will continue to help us." Chu Li frowned. "Again? Now that I've investigated the situation, I'll be more confident next time." Li Xinghe said, "The Church of the Divine Blood has been plundering secret manuals from various sections. There must be many mystical arts and antique studies in the Sutra Library. If we barge in," Chu Li waved his hand and said, "Forget it. I want to cultivate the dragon control art. It's fine if I don't learn other mystical arts and antique studies." "Brother Zhao," You have high standards. Li Xing has smiled. However, as far as I know, the Church of the Divine Blood Sutra Library still has many ancient antique studies. Unfortunately, there are very few of them because of the high aptitude requirement. Chu frowned and thought about it. Then, he shook his head and said, although antique studies are good, I don't have the heart to learn them. Li Xinghe sighed to himself. This guy won't act until he sees the hair. He pointed around and said with a smile, then I can pick 2 more treasures. What do you think? Chu Li raised his eyebrows and finally smiled. If you're really going to fight, you can inform me in advance. We'll see if I come or not. That's great. Li Xinghe nodded. Although he was not satisfied, at least he did not reject him directly. That was enough to show his interest. As long as he was a little more provocation, he would definitely be able to get Li Xinghe's help. Chu Li sat cross-legged in the thatched cottage at Small Light Peak. The strong wind howled outside like a knife, but the narrow thatched cottage was as warm as spring. He held the star stone in his hand and closed his eyes to activate the Heavenly Heart technique. He had been using the Heavenly Heart technique to nourish the star stone for the past few days. He wanted to experience the star stone's profoundness. Unfortunately, the star stone looked like an ordinary stone no matter how he looked at it. He kept suspecting that he had taken the wrong stone and that he had been tricked by Su Yongning. It was very likely that Su Yongning had taken an ordinary stone with him. The real star stone was not with him and was hidden somewhere else. If that was the case, the star stone would be a lost item and no one would be able to obtain it. However, since things had come to this, he could only persevere. He was confident in his intuition, so he had been activating the Heavenly Heart technique and using the inner energy of the technique to nourish this extremely ordinary stone. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. Since morning, he had a strong intuition that the stone seemed to have undergone some changes. It seemed like it had been changed by the Heavenly Heart technique. Although there were no changes on the outside, there was a complete change on the inside. Unfortunately, the omniscient mirror could not see through the changes on the inside. Chapter 1346. He felt that there would be a fundamental change in another 2 to 3 days. By then, the nurturing process would be complete and the star stone would truly be of use to him. He was inexplicably excited when he thought of this and wished that time would pass quickly. While nurturing the star stone and activating the Heavenly Heart technique, the Great Light scripture recited by the Buddha of Great Light in the void of his mind had changed and become the complete Great Light scripture. Although he did not cultivate the Great Light technique, his cultivation level was soaring. In just 7 days, he felt that his cultivation level had increased by a level. The next time he met Wei Wu Wei, he would not be so embarrassed even if he could not defeat him. Unfortunately, he was still inferior to Sun Mingwei. He did not know how much of a difference there was. Every time he improved his martial arts, he would feel inferior to Sun Mingwei, as if he could never surpass her. This kind of feeling could easily make one despair, but it also ignited Chu Li's fighting spirit. He wanted nothing more than to cultivate diligently all day long so that he could catch up to Sun Mingwei, even if half of her cultivation level was inherited. Just as he was in a good mood, he suddenly heard footsteps outside. Even in the howling wind, the footsteps could be heard clearly. It was deliberately made for him to hear. Come in. He raised his voice and saw Du Ying, who was dressed in a green robe, standing tall and slender outside. Du Ying gently pushed open the door of the cottage, bringing in fresh air and a faint fragrance. She walked to the bed and looked at Chu Li quietly. Chu Li opened his eyes and sighed helplessly. Senior sister, did something big happen? He was so close to successfully nurturing the star stone, but he was busy. If not for his ambition, he would have run back to Gale Branch to cultivate in isolation and ignore the Holy Church of Light. Du Ying smiled apologetically. I'm sorry to disturb you, junior brother. The saint wants to see you. Chu Li nodded. Did something big happen again? Yes, the falling Autumn City branch was destroyed overnight, and no one was spared. Du Ying frowned as her eyes flashed with anger. She sighed softly. The saint is very angry. She'll probably send you over to take a look. Chu Li frowned. Falling Autumn City. The Qiu dynasty and the Li dynasty had stopped fighting. Both sides felt that they could not win the war, and neither did they have the confidence to win. As such, they reluctantly agreed to a truce. However, the atmosphere in Falling Autumn City, which was located at the southwestern end of the Li dynasty and the Qiu dynasty, was still tense. There were two reasons for setting up a branch in Falling Autumn City. Firstly, it was to facilitate the transmission of information. Secondly, it was to guard Falling Autumn City. The war between armies had stopped, but the war between martial artists would never stop. Not only did Falling Autumn City set up a branch there, but the other three major sects also set up branches. All of them had elites stationed in Falling Autumn City to assist the imperial court in defending Falling Autumn City. How about the other three sects? Chu Li got up from the bed and kept the star stone in his sleeve. He frowned as he walked out of the room. Don't tell me he's safe and sound. Junior brother is right. The other three sects didn't suffer any losses, and only our branch was destroyed. Therefore, this matter is extremely suspicious. Doing followed him out. The two of them quickly entered the howling astral winds and floated down the mountain. Their voices were clearly heard by each other. Have Priest Lu and Priest Fong arrived? Chu Li asked as he walked. Doing shook her head. The two guardian kings had matters to attend to outside, so they couldn't make it back. Chu Li asked, My saint suspects that the other three sects did this. My saint can't say for sure. She didn't make a conclusion either. Doing followed behind him. She was light and graceful like a spirit swallow gliding across the sky. She was graceful and charming. It could be the other three sects or the Qiu dynasty. I'm afraid you'll have to investigate it yourself, junior brother. I have to do this myself? Isn't an altar leader enough? Chu Li shook his head. An altar leader had a high position. Although a priest position was higher, he was more detached. Usually, an altar leader would only be dispatched if an altar leader failed. It seems like altar leader sure has investigated, but he couldn't find any clues, Doing said. So, Chu Li smiled. He knew what doing meant. He scoffed. Can an altar leader challenge a priest? Altar leader's martial arts is also very high, Doing said. Moreover, he's also old, so it's inevitable that he'll take advantage of his seniority. Junior brother, don't offend him. It's very annoying when he plays tricks on you. You won't be able to get anything on him, and it'll delay the important matters. Chu Li nodded. Yes, I'll try my best. Doing looked at him helplessly. She knew that her words were useless. In the early morning, the Divine Light Basilica was shining brightly. Sun Mingyue sat quietly behind a long table. She was reading a dossier. Her clothes were as white as snow, and her face was covered with a white veil. Only her bright eyes could be seen. A middle-aged man with an imposing appearance stood at the bottom of the stairs. His eyes were bright, and his aura was like that of a lion. He was sizing Chu Li up as he walked into the basilica. Chu Li fist saluted. Saint, sorry to disturb your isolated cultivation. Sun Mingyue put down the dossier and said, This is Shizong's ancient history altar leader. The Falling Autumn City branch is under his jurisdiction. Chu Li fist saluted. Altar leader Shizongu fist saluted and said, Priest Zhao, you're young and promising. Chu Li did not comment. He looked at Sun Mingyue and asked, Saint, what's the urgent matter? He would not tell her that Du Ying had already informed him. Sun Mingyue nodded. Shizongu said, Priest Zhao, the Falling Autumn City branch was annihilated within 2 days. Nobody was spared. After I went to investigate, I felt that there were too many doubts. I dare not act on my own and could only report it. What doubts? Chu Li asked. Shizongu said, Their fatal injuries came from various sects' martial arts. It's hard to determine which sect the culprit is from. Chu Li frowned. How many people are there? I don't know. Shizongu shook his head. It seems to be 1, but it also seems to be close to 10. How many people are there in the branch? Chu Li asked. Shizongu said, Because the Falling Autumn City branch is special. It's strong. There are 10 grandmasters and 20 innate masters. They're all elite disciples. Chu Li's face darkened. 10 grandmasters. 10 grandmasters were not inferior to an average sect, and they were all masters under the hands of a grandmaster, which was beyond the average sect. This time, the loss was indeed huge. Grandmasters were very difficult to kill. Even if they could not defeat them, they could still escape. Moreover, grandmasters had amazing intuition. They could escape when danger approached. Killing 10 grandmasters in one go was not something an average person could do. Shizongu remained silent. Sun Mingyue said, "This is no small matter. It's of great importance. I can only delay your isolated cultivation. You should go and take a look." "Saint, are you afraid that the other 3 sects will join forces?" Chuli asked. Back then, Radiance Clan, the predecessor of Gale City's Grand Gale branch, was annihilated overnight. It was said that it was done by the White Tiger sect and the other 3 sections. Unfortunately, the Holy Church of Light could not find any evidence against them. They only suspected them and could not take revenge. This incident was similar to what happened to Radiance Clan. It seemed that the 3 sects had joined forces again. Sun Mingyue frowned. "We stopped fighting with the Qiu dynasty. We've lost 2 priests, and all sorts of evil people have appeared. Go and investigate which side they're from." Chuli nodded slowly. "Yes, but I need to act on my own." Chapter 1347. The authority to make decisions on the spot was extremely powerful and was usually not given to others. Even a priest would not do so. Sun Mingyue was infuriated by this incident, and she had disturbed Chu Li's isolated cultivation. Feeling apologetic, she finally agreed to let Chu Li handle the matter, and she would not interfere in it. Chu Li fist saluted. "I'll leave for Falling Autumn City immediately. The sooner the better." Sun Mingyue scoffed. "If it's clear." Chu Li nodded and turned to look at Shizongu. Shizongu said, "Priest Zhao, I'll go with you." Chu Li shook his head. "I'll go first. You can come after me." He nodded at Du Ying and left the Divine Light Basilica. His figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. Shizongu cursed in his heart, but did not show it on his face. He fist saluted Sun Mingyue. "Saint, I'll take my leave now. I'll go after Priest Zhao. Falling Autumn City is very tense now. I'm afraid that they won't cooperate after Priest Zhao goes there." Sun Mingyue said, "Altar leader, sure. Keep your thoughts to yourself. You should know the severity of this matter. If you delay the progress, don't blame the church for being merciless." "Yes." Shizongu's expression tensed up. "I'll do my best to cooperate with Priest Zhao." "That's good. I hope you're not being perfunctory." Sun Mingyue scoffed and waved her hand. "Go." Shizongu bowed deeply and left with large strides. His heart shivered. The saintess's eyes were like a torch. His little thoughts couldn't be hidden from her at all. He desperately used his light body technique to chase after him. He did not believe that the young man who had only cultivated for 2 to 3 years could be stronger than him. Even if he was, he could not be much stronger. He was famous for his divine movement and was an expert in light body technique. He could reach Falling Autumn City in a day. He did not stop rushing. He wanted to reach Falling Autumn City in advance. He wanted to see if Zhao Dai had the cheek to put on airs as a priest in front of him. He was so arrogant at such a young age. He was extremely dissatisfied with Chu Li. He felt that Chu Li did not respect him as an altar leader and was too arrogant. When Chu Li arrived at Falling Autumn City, he saw 30 corpses encased in ice. The entire Falling Autumn City branch was enveloped in ice, and only 5 disciples of the Holy Church of Light stood guard outside listlessly. Before Chu Li arrived at the branch, the omniscient mirror had already seen the injuries clearly from afar. Thus, he quietly entered and checked each of them with his hand. In the end, his face darkened, and he left without saying a word. He appeared soundlessly in a restaurant in Falling Autumn City and stood outside the door of a room on the top floor, which was the 4th floor. He stood in the gorgeous corridor and knocked on the door. "Come in." A graceful voice came from the room. Chu Li pushed the door open and entered. He gave a fist salute to the beautiful woman who was lying on the couch. "Greetings, Senior Bai." Bai Feng from the Tian Luo sect was dressed in a white robe, as she reclined lazily on the couch. She held a book in her hand as she looked at them lazily. A smile appeared on her exquisite and beautiful face. "Oh, it's Priest Zhao who has graced us with his presence. Your presence brings light to our humble dwelling." She put down the book and stood up gracefully. "Please take a seat." She walked to an embroidered stool and sat down gracefully. Chuli sat on another embroidered stool as well. The two of them were only 2 steps apart. Bai Feng took the opportunity to pour him a cup of tea from the teapot on the short table and handed it to him. "Why are you here? It's rare to see a priest." Her bright eyes glowed as she sized Chuli up. It was truly hard for her to believe that Zhao Dai had become a priest in such a short period of time. This was the first time such a thing had happened in the Holy Church of Light. He was the person who had risen the fastest in the Holy Church of Light in thousands of years. She knew very well how difficult it was to be promoted to the position of a priest. Although it was due to the sudden death of 2 priests that he had the opportunity to become a priest so quickly, the position of a priest in the Holy Church of Light was one that they would rather not have. Currently, there was still an empty position of a priest because none of the followers below him could fulfill the requirements. Chuli gave a fist salute and said, "Senior Bai, you don't have to tease me. I was just lucky." "Lucky?" Bai Feng laughed and shook her head. "A branch leader can be lucky, but not a priest. What brings you here today?" "It's about the falling Autumn City branch," Chuli said seriously. "The Saint suspects that the incident with the Radiance clan has happened again. It's possible that your sect has joined forces with the other 2 sections." The smile on Bai Feng's beautiful face disappeared, and she frowned slightly. Chuli said, "The Holy Church of Light seems to have suffered a great loss after losing 2 priests in the battle with the Prophecy Pavilion. This is a great opportunity to weaken the Holy Church of Light. It's a great temptation." Bai Feng shook her head. "We didn't do it. Tian Luo's sect didn't participate in it. Absolutely not." Bai Feng shook her head. "I would have known if they did, and I wouldn't have done it. This is Falling Autumn City. Wouldn't we be a laughing stock in front of the Qiu dynasty?" Chuli sighed. "Tian Luo's sect thinks so, but White Tiger's sect might not. There's also Flaming Sun's sect." He shook his head. He felt that Bai Feng was telling the truth. Tian Luo's sect did not participate in it. "Has Miss Ru come out of seclusion?" He changed the topic. Bai Feng smiled. "She's returned to Gale City." Chuli said, "Gale City is more suitable for Miss Ru. You can visit her if you're free," Bai Feng said. "She's quite accomplished in martial arts now." Chuli nodded. Bai Feng muttered, "Priest Zhao, I don't think White Tiger sect and Flaming Sun sect are involved in this because it's unnecessary. No matter how weak the Holy Church of Light is, it's impossible for them to replace the Holy Church of Light as the strongest of the 4 sections." Chuli smiled. "Senior Bai, you might think that way, but unfortunately White Tiger sect and Flaming Sun sect don't think so." "How about this? I'll invite them over to meet you," Bai Feng said. Chuli fist saluted. "Thank you, senior." Bai Feng pursed her lips and smiled. "It's nothing. There's no need to thank me." Chuli smiled and said nothing else. This was not a simple matter. It was a clear statement that Tian Luo's sect would stand on the Holy Church of Light side. He had first come to meet Bai Feng and reminisce about their old friendship. He had told her frankly and subtly pressured her so that he could achieve this goal. He wanted a rope in the Tian Luo sect so that the White Tiger sect and the Flaming Sun sect would not be able to cause any more trouble. In the future, the internal strife would also be quelled. "Someone," Bai Feng raised her voice. A delicate and pretty maid entered and stood by her side. Bai Feng gave her a few instructions. The maid responded crisply and gracefully left. Chuli and Bai Feng talked about the battle between the Holy Church of Light and Prophecy Pavilion. Before they could finish their tea, footsteps and laughter could be heard from outside. "This is the first time we've been invited by Fairy Bai. We're flattered. Haha." Amidst the laughter, 2 rough-looking men pushed the door open and strode in with big smiles on their faces. Bai Feng sat on a garden stool and fist saluted. "Clan Leader Zhang, Clan Leader Liang, let me introduce you to an important person." Both of them stared at Chuli. Chuli slowly stood up and fist saluted. He calmly said, "I'm Zhao Dai. Nice to meet you." Zhao De. Their expressions changed. Chapter 1348. Bai Feng chuckled. Priest Zhao, this is Zhang Teng from the White Tiger sect and Liang Pingyuan from the Flaming Sun sect. Chu Li nodded. Sorry for disturbing you. Priest Zhao, I'm sure both of you know why I'm here. We don't. Liang Pingyuan shook his head. Why is Priest Zhao looking for us? Chu Li narrowed his eyes and looked at him. I'm sure both of you have any news about our branch being destroyed? Or was it done by both of you? What do you mean? Liang Pingyuan smiled. We can't just say that it was us who did it, right? Chu Li said, our disciple's fatal injury was caused by the White Tiger sect's White Tiger Divine, Fist, and Flaming Sun Palm. Impossible. Zhang Teng scoffed. Chu Li smiled faintly and shook his head. Clan leader Zhang, we wouldn't have killed our disciple and framed you, would we? The Holy Church isn't that senseless. We didn't have to go through so much trouble to deal with you. We know very well whether we did it or not. We definitely didn't do it. Liang Pingyuan said. Chu Li looked at him deeply. You know very well whether we did it or not. Priest Zhao, do you think we did it? Zhang Ting asked calmly. Chu Li shook his head. I don't think it was you. Why do you think so? Zhang Teng scoffed. Chu Li smiled. You don't have the guts to do it. How arrogant of you. Zhang Teng sneered. Do you really think that we won't dare to offend the Holy Church of Light just because you're the number one among the four sects? If you really dare to do it, you should know what we'll do. Chu Li shook his head. Unless the three sects join forces, you won't dare to do it. But there's no proof to say that someone is pretending to be from your sections. What do you mean? Zhang Teng frowned. Priest Zhao, don't tell me you want us to prove our innocence? Of course. Chu Li nodded slowly. The one who died was our disciple, and the injury was caused by your sect's martial arts. Logically speaking, I should have attacked you directly, but for the sake of the bigger picture, I wouldn't have done it so crudely. Priest Zhao, who do you think did it? Zhang Teng asked. Brother Zhang. Liang Pingyuan frowned and glared at Zhang Teng. Zhang Teng did not look at him. He only stared at Chu Li. Who could have framed us? Chu Li said, you must have a lot of enemies, right? Moreover, to be able to display such power from two sects' martial arts, it's definitely not an ordinary sect. Zhang Teng frowned and said, Fuang Zhao, please speak your mind. Chu Li smiled faintly. It's better not to say. Chu Li could not identify the culprit based on the injuries of the disciples. He was certain that the White Tiger sect and the Flaming Sun sect were the culprits. That was why he had the two of them come over. Through the omniscient mirror, he could see through their thoughts and knew that they were not the culprits. Fortunately, they didn't have any treasures protecting them. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to see through their thoughts, and he would have to go through a lot of trouble. Zhang Teng frowned and remained silent. Liang Pingyuan could not help but snort coldly. Zhao Fuang, this matter was not done by us, so it has nothing to do with us. Why do you need us to help investigate the matter of your disciple being killed? Chu Li looked at Liang Pingyuan and said calmly, your sect's martial arts are not taught to outsiders, right? Of course not. Liang Pingyuan snorted. Chu Li said, then why were they killed by the Flaming Sun Palm? If your martial arts were taught to outsiders, you should be able to find out who it was taught to. This is the easiest way to find the culprit. You're not even willing to help when it's convenient? Zhao Fuang, this is not the attitude to ask for help. Liang Pingyuan said coldly. Chu Li looked at him calmly. Then should I kneel down and beg you, clan leader Liang? Zhang Teng said, this matter is indeed related to us. The culprit actually impersonated our two sections. This is a provocation. Even if Zhao Fuang did not say it, we must find out who it is. He gave Liang Pingyuan a look. Liang Pingyuan suppressed his surging anger and snorted coldly without saying anything more. He was extremely dissatisfied with Chu Li's domineering attitude. It was as if he had become a disciple of the Holy Church of Light and was ordered around by them. Chu Li nodded. Thank you, clan leader Zhang. I'll wait for your good news. Zhao Fuang, just wait for the good news. Zhang Teng smiled. We will do our best and give Zhao Fuang an explanation as soon as possible. All right. Chu Li nodded casually. Zhang Teng and Liang Pingyuan Fist saluted and left. After leaving the restaurant and walking on the bustling street, Zhang Teng turned his head to look at Liang Pingyuan. Brother Liang, why do you have to go against him? He's so young, but he's so arrogant. Liang Pingyuan scoffed. Zhang Teng shook his head. He's young, but he's still a priest of the Holy Church of Light. His status is indeed higher than ours. Not only should we not look down on him because of his young age, but we should also pay more attention to him. He sighed helplessly. Zhao De had become a priest at such a young age. Not to mention those outside the Holy Church of Light, even those within the Holy Church of Light would not be convinced. This was human nature, and no one could avoid it. Because of this, it was conceivable that Zhao De would be ruthless to establish his authority and make others speechless. Zhao De was not a kind person. Back then, he had killed everyone in Gale City. Now that he had become a priest, he would be even more ruthless. It was not wise to go against him head-on. Liang Pingyuan said, he's too arrogant. He called us here and asked us to investigate the culprit. What kind of people are we? We really need to investigate this matter. He impersonated us and used our martial arts to kill a disciple of the Holy Church of Light. He's not an ordinary person. Zhang Teng's face darkened, and he sighed. It's most likely the reincarnation temple's doing. He framed us and provoked a civil war so that he could reap the benefits. Liang Pingyuan inhaled sharply. He's really vicious. If it wasn't for Priest Zhao's calmness, it would have been dangerous. Zhang Teng shook his head. If it were someone else, would they believe that our two sects are innocent? Maybe they didn't even ask us and directly attacked us. No matter how weak the Holy Church of Light is, we can't fight against them. Liang Pingyuan nodded slowly. The Radiance Clan incident was the Holy Church of Light's sore spot. The Holy Church of Light, which had always been proud, had been holding back their anger. As time passed, their anger did not dissipate but became stronger. This incident was exactly the same as what had happened to the Radiance Clan in the past. Seeing this, old and new grudges surged in their hearts. The Holy Church of Light was probably enraged and wanted to take revenge with interest. They had already made their move. Thinking of this, Liang Pingyuan felt a chill down his spine. If that were to happen, the entire martial arts world of the Great Li would be plunged into a sea of blood, and no one knew how many people would die. Do your best to investigate this matter. If you really can't find anything, don't force yourself. Zhang Teng said. He has already determined that we are not the murderers. He won't vent his anger on us just because he can't find the murderer. I'm just afraid that he's young and impetuous. Liang Pingyuan frowned. Zhang Teng said. He looks young and full of vigor, but his actions are calm and steady. To be able to become a law emperor, he's definitely not an ordinary person. Liang Pingyuan nodded. Through the omniscient mirror, Chu Li could clearly see what they were thinking. He frowned and pondered. He also suspected that the reincarnation temple was the doing of the martial arts world of the Qiu dynasty. Senior Bai, I'd like to rest here for 2 nights. Chu Li smiled. Bai Feng smiled sweetly. You're most welcome. Come with me. She got up and walked out of the house. She pushed open the door to the room next door and let him stay here. Chapter 1349. The inner energy of the heavenly heart technique flowed continuously. His mind was calm, but there was a hint of anger. He had a greater ambition for the Holy Church of Light. He wanted to control the Holy Church of Light for his own use. Now that he had gained Sun Mingyue's full trust and made a few more contributions, his prestige in the church would increase. When that time came, his power would only be below Sun Mingyue's. Once he said a word, the Holy Church of Light would listen to him. With the Holy Church of Light's help, he would be able to do many things. Therefore, he had already regarded the Holy Church of Light as his own force. He was extremely angry when a branch was suddenly killed. It was as if his pet had been killed. He hated the murderer very much and wanted to destroy the murderer. Anger and peace were originally opposites, but under the circulation of the heavenly heart technique, they were strangely compatible and were in a strange state. He suddenly felt that the world had suddenly become quiet. It was as if the world had stopped moving and time had stopped flowing. Everything was still, and his mind was exceptionally calm. He could do whatever he wanted. All restraints had been removed, and his mind had completely regained its freedom. With a flash of inspiration, he used the Heavenly Heart Technique's inner energy to activate the peering technique. A cold aura flowed through his hand and into his mind. A distorted shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. This distorted shadow gradually became clearer, and he could clearly see who was inside and what was happening. As this scene appeared, the aura in his mind dissipated and his eyes became clear again. What he saw earlier was like a dream. He squinted his eyes. This was the peering technique under the Starstone. It was indeed different from using the peering technique himself. It was a completely different situation. A bright moon hung high in the night sky and slowly sprinkled its light down. Everything around it became mysterious, as if there were countless secrets hidden in the dark that could jump out at any time. Ever since the Chiu dynasty and the Li dynasty stopped fighting, Falling Autumn City suddenly became prosperous. The trade between the two countries was reopened. Falling Autumn City was where the trade market between the two countries was located. The trade that was affected by the war rebounded in retaliation, and it was several times more prosperous than usual. It made Falling Autumn City flourish in a short period of time. There was a big house on a street next to the central street. It was the Tiger Fury clan where the White Tiger sect was located. Even though it was midnight, the street was still bustling with activity and was brightly lit. However, the Tiger Fury clan was quiet, as if the people had fallen asleep. 10 figures in dark gray clothes silently landed in the courtyard of the Furious Tiger Hall. Their footsteps were soundless, and their clothes were soundless. They arrived outside a house as light as a feather. The 4 of them stood guard outside. 2 of them put their hands together and pressed on the door of the house. Soundlessly, they removed the door and moved it open. The remaining 4 people entered the house. 2 muffled groans could be heard from within the house. Then, silence returned, and the 4 of them floated out. They each had their own roles, and they cooperated with tacit understanding. They dealt with the situation cleanly. The 2 Tiger Fury Hall disciples had already silently died. They entered another room, and then 2 more Tiger Fury Hall disciples silently died. "Who is it?" A shout suddenly resounded through the entire Tiger's Fury Hall. Suddenly, the lights were turned on. The large and quiet Tiger's Fury Hall suddenly became brightly lit. All the disciples ran out of the house, and more than 100 people surrounded the courtyard in the blink of an eye. The 10 men in gray were exposed to the light and were glared at by the crowd. They were ready to pounce on them at any time. 4 middle-aged men in white clothes slowly walked over. The crowd quickly made way for them. The 4 middle-aged men in white clothes split into 2 groups and stood on the left and right. Hall Master Zhang Tung walked out from the center. He was dressed in a loose nightgown and stared at the 10 men in gray with a gloomy expression. The 10 men in gray did not conceal their faces. They looked at Zhang Tung and the crowd calmly. "Monk Zhishan." Zhang Tung's expression was extremely gloomy. A tall and burly monk stood in the middle of the 10 men. His bald head gleamed under the light, and his eyes were bright like torches. He put his palms together calmly and suddenly revealed a bright smile. "Oh, Master Zhang, sorry to disturb you. What are you doing?" Zhang Tung said coldly. "Why are you killing the disciples of the Tiger's Fury Hall for no reason?" "Hee. Oh, Master Zhang, that's a funny question." Zhishan's handsome face revealed a sarcastic smile. "Isn't it obvious? We're here to kill and avenge the Chiu dynasty's soldiers. Are you trying to start a war again?" Zhang Ting asked in a deep voice. "We just stopped fighting and you're already provoking us again. Do you really want to fight to the death?" "We don't care what the army does." Zhishan shook his head. "But the Li dynasty's martial arts world can forget about this. We'll continue to kill until the Li dynasty's martial arts world admits defeat." "How arrogant!" Zhang Tung sneered. "All right, the White Tiger sect will fight you to the end. Hall Master Zhang is the one who's arrogant," Zhishan said with a smile. Do you think the White Tiger sect can afford to fight us? Today, we'll let Home Master Zhang know how powerful we are. Everyone, let's do it. As soon as he finished speaking, the 9 gray-robed men immediately pounced on the crowd and attacked first. Instantly, the shadows of swords and sabers flashed, fist energy and palm wind whistled, and the battle became chaotic. From time to time, Tiger Fury Clan's disciples fell. Zhishan stood where he was with a smile and looked at Zhang Tong. Since Zhang Tong did not move, he did not move. The other 9 men were like wolves that had entered a flock of sheep. They were invincible, and no one could match them. In just a short while, 10 Tiger Fury Clan's disciples had fallen. Zhang Tong gritted his teeth and glared at Monk Zhishan. Haizong Mountain, Royal Blade Palace, come at me together. Yes. Monk Zhishan pressed his palms together and smiled. Our 3 sects have joined forces. Do you want to join forces too? Won't the Holy Church of Light destroy you first? You did it. Zhang Tong shouted. You killed the Holy Church of Light's branch. At least you're not hopelessly stupid. Monk Zhishan shook his head and sighed. Sigh. The world is like a wheel. Yin and yang coexist, and life and death go hand in hand. You don't have to worry too much. After the Tiger Fury Clan is destroyed, we'll frame the Holy Church of Light. What do you think will happen? Ha! He laughed heartily, looking extremely joyful. What a vicious method. Zhang Tong gritted his teeth and felt a chill run down his spine. As a Buddhist disciple, how could they use such a vicious method? Aren't they afraid of retribution? Life is death, and death is life. The cycle of life and death is endless. Why do you have to be so stubborn? Monk Zhishan shook his head. Don't worry. After you die, you'll only need to experience 9 cycles of reincarnation. You'll be reborn as a human. There's no need to be afraid. Zhang Tong glared at him and secretly channeled his energy. Once the Tiger Fury Clan was destroyed and the Holy Church of Light was blamed for it, the consequences could be predicted. The disciples of the White Tiger sect were hot-tempered because they cultivated the White Tiger power. They were like dry firewood that could be easily ignited. They were not as patient as Zhao De. Once they found out that they were killed by the Holy Church of Light's martial arts, they would immediately take revenge. The Holy Church of Light would not be lenient either. A war between the 2 sects would greatly damage their strength, but the real culprit would be able to get away with it. When he thought about this, he felt angry and worried. He immediately let out a long whistle. The whistle spread out like a tidal wave. It could be heard in half of falling Autumn City. However, Monk Zhishan was calm. He shook his head and said, You want to ask them for help, don't you? How dare you? The Tiger Fury Clan isn't the only sect in falling Autumn City. Zhang Tong scoffed. Monk Zhishan shook his head and sighed. I'm really sorry. I haven't told you about this, clan leader Zhang. Actually, we're not the only sect. The Tian Luo sect and the Flaming Sun Palm have sent people to greet them. They can't even take care of themselves, so it's impossible for them to come and save you. Zhang Tong frowned and stared at him. Chapter 1350. Monk Zhishan smiled. Clan leader Zhang, I'm impressed. What's there to be impressed about me? Zhang Tong gritted his teeth and sneered. I'm all ears. He wanted to drag things out for a bit longer, as there was still a glimmer of hope. Monk Zhishan sighed. If I were you, I wouldn't be able to keep my composure and watch my disciples fall. Zhang Tong scoffed. I'm no match for you. It's already a miracle that I can hold you back. I don't dare to hope for anything else. You're indeed a rare talent to be so rational and calm. Clan leader Zhang, I can't bear to send you into the cycle of reincarnation. Monk Zhishan shook his head and smiled. Why don't you submit to the reincarnation temple and become a layman disciple? You can cultivate the martial arts of our temple, and another magical door will be opened in front of you. You'll realize that the world isn't what you see. It's not real. Do you think I can cultivate the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture if I submit to you? Zhang Tong scoffed. Monk Zhishan smiled. I can teach you the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture, but I'm afraid you don't have the talent. You can only cultivate the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture with the upper and middle root vessels. As long as I can teach it, I can cultivate it. I'm just afraid that the reincarnation temple won't dare to teach me. Zhang Teng scoffed. Ha! Monk Ji Shan shook his head. If you don't have the talent, cultivating the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture will not only bring no benefits but also harm. It's life-threatening. It's a pity that we don't teach it to outsiders. Piss, 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 piss. A shrill whistling sound was heard, and several cold lights shot out from the middle of the courtyard. After the cold lights shot out, a figure appeared in the middle of the courtyard as if he had appeared out of thin air. He wore a green robe and had an ordinary appearance. Even his eyes were ordinary and did not have the clear and bright look of a martial arts practitioner. The 9 middle-aged men in gray who were fighting did not manage to dodge the sudden appearance of the cold lights. Their instincts had just awakened when the cold lights arrived. Some of them reacted faster than their brains and managed to avoid their vitals, while others did not have the talent to do so. Pung, 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 pung. The 9 gray-robed, middle-aged men were sent flying, each crashing into a wall. Some smashed the windows, some landed on the courtyard wall, some landed on the rockery, and some landed on the weapons rack. All of them vomited blood and were severely injured. 6 of the middle-aged men in gray had already died, and the other 3 had already lost the strength to fight. Although they were not in vital areas, the power of the saber was continuous and ever-changing, constantly destroying their internal organs and worsening their injuries. Zhao De. The smile on Monk Ji Shan's face froze. His expression instantly darkened as he glared coldly at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled and gave a fist salute. Monk Ji Shan, it's been a while. How have you been? Monk Ji Shan took a deep breath and smiled. I didn't expect you to have such a cultivation level, Priest Zhao. Congratulations. Chu Li nodded. Thanks to your blessing, I made some progress, but I'm still lacking compared to you, Monk Ji Shan. I'm ashamed. Monk Ji Shan glanced at the 9 middle-aged men in gray clothes on the ground and sneered. Zhao Fuwang, you're really capable. Let's have a spar and see what skills you've gained. That's what I was thinking. Chu Li smiled and turned to look at Zhang Teng. Clan leader Zhang, clean up these people. Kill those who deserve to be killed, and save those who need to be saved. I'll get to know Monk Ji Shan better. Thank you, Priest Zhao. Zhang Teng gave a fist salute. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Suddenly, he threw a punch. Monk Ji Shan took the opportunity to appear behind him while he was talking and was about to launch a sneak attack. However, Chu Li's divine light fist had already arrived. Ding! A dark lunar chakram appeared in Monk Ji Shan's sleeve. The lunar chakram blocked Chu Li's punch and was thrown out. Woo! The lunar chakram was like a black bolt of lightning. The fist force seemed to have increased its speed, and it appeared in front of Chu Li in an instant. Chu Li flicked his finger. Ding! The lunar chakram let out a clear ring and slowed down. Chu Li grabbed the lunar chakram and kept it in his sleeve. He smiled and said, Thank you, Monk. This is good stuff. Monk Ji Shan waved his sleeve, and a cold light flashed. The small solar chakram was shot out. Its speed was faster than before, and it appeared in front of Chu Li in an instant. Chu Li flicked his finger again and accurately hit the solar chakram. The cold light disappeared, and the shape of the solar chakram appeared. Then, it fell into Chu Li's hand. He kept it in his sleeve again and smiled at Monk Ji Shan. Monk, do you have more? It'd be best if you have 2 more chakrams. Monk Ji Shan looked at Chu Li solemnly, and his heart sank. Almost no one could subdue the sun and moon chakrams. Even those whose martial arts were 2 levels higher than him would not dare to touch the chakrams. The chakrams contained extremely pure inner energy from the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. As the chakrams rotated, it was impossible to defend against it. Zhao De was able to subdue the sun and moon chakrams because he had also cultivated the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. Moreover, he was able to grasp the level and essence of his earth matrix and reincarnation scripture from his sun and moon chakrams. Chu Li appeared to be at ease, but in his heart, he was secretly groaning. The inner energy contained in these two wheels was endless and ever-changing. He could not even defend himself against it. In just a short while, 6 waves of inner energy had already entered his body and were rampaging around. He quickly used the cloud's slashing power to devour the inner energy. It was very difficult to do so, but he smiled calmly. Monk Zhishan, it seems like you haven't made much progress recently. I'm really disappointed. Monk Zhishan looked at the 3 middle-aged men in gray who were heavily injured by Zhang Teng and the others. He smiled calmly. At this level of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, it's difficult to improve. I can only polish it well and train my heart. I'm looking for an opportunity to break through, and it seems like my opportunity, Priest Zhao. Chu Li smiled. Monk, what are you waiting for? Are you going to wait until they're all dead and you have nothing to worry about? That's right. Monk Zhishan bowed with pressed palms. Priest Zhao is indeed wise. Chu Li shook his head. A monk can't be so indifferent to human lives. Watch my fist. The cloud-slashing power finally devoured the 6 waves of inner energy. He could vaguely feel that he had made progress. His understanding of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture seemed to have deepened and was even better than his own cultivation. This was a wonderful cultivation method. With this thought in mind, he asked, Monk Zhishan, did you destroy the Holy Church of Light's branch? Priest Zhao, why ask when you already know the answer? Monk Zhishan smiled. What a pity. He originally planned to destroy the Holy Church of Light's branch, and then the White Tiger sect's Wrath Tiger clan. The 2 sects would have to fight each other. He did not expect the Holy Church of Light to react so quickly and send Zhao Dai over. The most commendable thing was that Zhao Dai was able to keep his cool and did not act immediately. He also knew about the Holy Church of Light's Radiance clan. He knew that this was a scar that was the easiest to hurt. Unfortunately, Godzilla was not as good as his plan. They actually sent Zhao Dai over and ruined his plan. He wanted to kill Chu Li with a palm strike, so he slowly pushed out his palm. Chu Li threw out a divine light fist. Monk Zhishan suddenly disappeared and appeared behind Chu Li in the next moment. Chu Li swung his hands, and 2 cold lights shot out. Monk Zhishan disappeared in a flash and avoided the blade light that was inches away. His senses were extremely sharp. Chapter 13:51. Swoosh, swoosh. 2 soft whistles could be heard as the blade flashes pierced through Monk Zhishan's clothes, but were blocked by his inner armor. Bam! Monk Zhishan was sent flying by the blade and spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. He suddenly disappeared and evaded the other 2 blades. Chu Li narrowed his eyes and held the star stone in his hand. A cold current flowed into his mind as he activated the nature restoration manifestation. Instantly, a scene appeared clearly in his mind, and he threw the blade again. The moment Monk Zhishan appeared, the flying blade was already at his throat, but was blocked by his left hand. His hand was as white as jade, and there was a red spot on his palm, as if it was stained with cinnabar. The flying blade hit the red spot and then shot into his left palm. However, it did not penetrate his throat and stopped in front of it. Bam! Monk Zhishan was sent flying again. He flew backward to neutralize the force of the flying blade. Not only was Chu Li's inner energy pure, but his cultivation level was also twice as high. His strength had also increased tremendously. The flying blade did not only contain inner energy, but also a strong external force. The combination of the 2 forces was shocking. Although he managed to block the flying blade, he could not block the force of the blade. Monk, you shall enter reincarnation today. Chu Li shook his head and smiled as he threw the blade again. Monk Zhishan pulled the flying blade out of his left palm and put it in his pocket. He put his palms together, and although his palms were stained with blood, it did not affect the solemn and holy look on his face. He chanted the name of Buddha, Namo Amitabha. After he chanted the name of Buddha, his face suddenly aged. Wrinkles appeared and his skin loosened. It was as if he had suddenly turned from a young man to an old man. 300 to 400 years had passed in an instant. Only his eyes were clear and bright. They were so cold that no one dared to look at him directly. Chu Li frowned as he knew that Ji-shan had performed another secret skill. He threw the flying blade again. Swoosh! Monk Ji-shan did not dodge the flying blade. He flicked his finger, and the wind from his finger whistled like a flying blade. Ding! The flying blade suddenly bounced in the air and fell straight to the ground. Chu Li furrowed his brows as he saw an extremely refined and substantial finger force hit the flying dagger. This finger force surprised him. Not only did it require pure finger force, but it also required precision. It was not easy to hit the thin tip of the flying blade. Chu Li shot out another energy blade. Bam! Monk Ji-shan calmly shot out a finger and collided with the energy blade. Both of them dissipated. Before Chu Li could launch another attack, Monk Ji-shan's finger force had already reached Chu Li's chest. Chu Li took a step to the side to avoid it and shot out an energy blade at the same time. Bang, 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 bang. The energy blades collided with the finger force, and in the blink of an eye, more than a dozen energy blades had been shot out. Chu Li seemed to be competing with him. He kept shooting out energy blades faster and faster. Monk Ji-shan's white eyebrows knitted together tightly. He had initially thought that the light blade would consume a lot of inner energy and that he would not be able to use it more than a few times. With his profound cultivation level, he would be able to suppress Chu Li and force him to leave. Unexpectedly, Chu Li's energy blades seemed to be endless. After almost 20 strikes, he did not show any signs of fatigue or emptiness. Instead, he became more energetic and seemed to be getting smoother and smoother. He was in a good state, and his energy blades were getting faster and faster. Indeed, Chu Li could feel that his light blade was improving. It was as if he had found a strange state where his understanding of the light blade was deepening. His execution of the light blade was much smoother and faster than before. Moreover, the energy blade was much more condensed. Unknowingly, his light blade had reached the final level and was about to achieve perfect mastery. He suddenly realized that the main reason was not the Star Stone, but the completion of the Great Light Scripture, which was more beneficial to his understanding of the light blade. As his divine light technique improved, so did his light blade. He even felt that his divine light fist had also improved. If he continued to polish it, he would be able to reach another level and step onto another level. Monk Ji-shan suddenly disappeared and appeared on Chu Li's left side. Two finger forces attacked at the same time. However, Chu Li seemed to have predicted this. He took a diagonal step forward the moment Ji-shan appeared, closing the distance between him and Monk Ji-shan. At the same time, he evaded the finger force and threw out a divine light fist. Then, a petrifying finger silently shot out from his sleeve, followed by a flying blade. Monk Ji-shan felt that something was wrong, and his body stopped moving. Chu Li's blade was aimed at his throat. Swoosh! Monk Ji-shan was sent flying. The flying blade pierced through his throat and shot into the wall next to him. Chu Li was overjoyed and shot out another blade. To others, a shot to the throat would be enough to kill them, but not to Monk Ji-shan. Namo Amitba, a Buddhist chant that sounded like a bronze bell rang through the night sky, causing everyone's ears to go numb and their blood to surge. An old monk dressed in a gray frock appeared silently beside Monk Ji-shan, picked him up, and disappeared in an instant. Chu Li's expression changed slightly. He disappeared and appeared at the top of falling autumn city in the next moment. The gray-robed old monk's eyebrows were all white. He flew across the night sky like a crane and flew over the top of falling autumn city. Swoosh! Chu Li shot out a flying blade. The gray-robed old monk spread his wide robe sleeves and shielded himself and Monk Ji-shan. The flying blade shot into the monk's sleeves and fell down without a sound. When Chu Li shot out a second blade, the old monk was already 100 meters away. Chu Li disappeared in a flash and appeared in front of the old monk in the next moment. He threw out a punch. Bang! The old monk had an ordinary appearance. His eyebrows were all white, and his face was white as snow. He looked a little strange, but he was calm and elegant like a spirit crane. He reached out his palm and caught Chu Li's punch. Both of them took a step back and were evenly matched. Chu frowned and threw out another punch. However, the old monk dodged and skimmed to the side. He did not want to fight Chu. Chu disappeared in a flash and appeared in front of him again. He threw out another divine light fist. This punch was too fast, and Chu appeared out of nowhere. The old monk wanted to dodge, but could not, so he could only take it head-on. Bang! The old monk's robe fluttered, and he finally took a step back. Chu waved his hands and shot one blade at the old monk and the other at Monk Zhishan. Monk Zhishan had already passed out, but Chu could feel that he was full of vitality and was no longer in danger. It was obvious that he had taken the spirit pill. Chu suddenly hesitated. With the starstone in his hand, his senses were exceptionally sharp. He suddenly felt that he needed to rely on Monk Zhishan to break through the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. If he killed him now, he would be cutting off a part of his opportunity. Who are you? Tell me your Dharma name. Chu threw out a divine light fist and scoffed. The old monk dodged the two blades and shook his head. I'm Yuan Wu. Chu frowned. Yuan Wu, you're over 100 years old, right? The old monk shook his head and smiled. I'm 80 this year. You're so old at 80? Chu said as he threw out a punch. The old monk answered while dodging. I have an understanding of Buddhism, so I'm in a state of suffering. I can only regain my youth after I leave. Chu scoffed. If the reincarnation temple wants to go to war with the Holy Church of Light, then let's fight. Priest Zhao, you've misunderstood. The old monk said gently. All of this is an act of kindness. Our temple has no intention of going to war with the Holy Church of Light. This is a personal grudge. There's no need to involve both sections. Chu sneered. If it goes smoothly, it's the reincarnation temple's trip. If it doesn't, it's a personal matter. You guys are really wishful thinking. Sigh. The old monk Yuan Wu shook his head. I don't lie. Let's go to the Great Light Peak and explain this personally. That's great, Chu said. He was filled with killing intent and had decided to go to the Qiu dynasty. Chapter 1352. Chu stopped and frowned at him. All right, we'll wait for you at the Great Light Peak. If no one from your temple comes, don't blame us for taking revenge. You killed 30 of my men, and I'll kill 60 of your men. I'll report to the Peak Lord. Yuan Wu pressed his palms together and left. Chu stared at Yuan Wu's back and frowned. He then appeared outside Bai Feng's room and knocked on the door. Bai Feng called out, "Come in." Chu pushed the door open and entered. A faint fragrance wafted into his nose. Bai Feng was standing in front of the window. The window was opened and the night breeze lifted the curtains, ruffling Bai Feng's hair. Her white clothes fluttered and her hair danced playfully. She turned around and looked at Chu. How's the situation over there? Chu replied. It's settled, but someone saved Monk Zhishan. Bai Feng came to the stool and gestured for him to sit. What about the others? They've been killed. Chu frowned. Royal Blade Palace and Haizong Mountain were among the 30 masters. It seems like they're working together to weaken the martial arts world of the Li dynasty. We have to be careful. Bai Feng nodded. The martial arts world of the Li dynasty is scattered, but they're united. We have to be careful. She then chuckled. Priest Zhao, you've saved the branches of our 3 sections. We have to thank you. Chu shook his head and smiled without saying a word. He had used the Star Stone to peek into Monk Zhishan's movements. They had split into 3 groups and attacked them one by one. Logically, they should have been able to destroy the 3 branches. Even if they could not, they would have been heavily injured. His appearance ruined Zhishan's plan. Not only did they not succeed, but they were also almost completely wiped out. Other than Monk Zhishan, the rest of the 30 masters were killed by him. This time, he had made a huge enemy of the martial arts world of the Qiu dynasty. 30 grandmasters was not a small number. Liang Pingyuan and Zhang Teng strode in with the sound of footsteps. They bowed respectfully as soon as they entered. Chu returned the gesture with a fist salute and smiled. You don't have to do this, clan leaders. We're all from the martial arts world of the Li dynasty. We should help each other when we're being plotted against by the martial arts world of the Qiu dynasty. It's our duty. Holy King Zhao's bearing is outstanding. We are ashamed. Zhang Tang shook his head and smiled. If it wasn't for Holy King Zhao, we would have been dead. Liang Pingyuan nodded slowly. At first, he was extremely dissatisfied with Chu Li's arrogance at such a young age. But in the face of his life-saving grace, he had nothing to say. Chu Li had the right to be arrogant, but he could only blame himself for not having enough cultivation to be on par with Chu Li. Chu Li replied, "They're extremely sinister. They destroyed our branch first before destroying your branch." Everyone was silenced because of what happened to the Radiance clan back then. The Qiu dynasty's martial arts world will then reap the spoils of war and reap the spoils of war. They are evil. Liang Pingyuan gritted his teeth. We must take revenge. Zhang Tang frowned and pondered. His temperament was calm and steady. Even though he cultivated the white tiger power, it did not change his temperament at all. Although he was furious, he was not in a hurry to make a move. He needed to plan before making a move. Otherwise, it would be easy for others to take advantage of him. Not only would he fail in his revenge, he would also die. What do you think, Holy King Zhao? Zhang Teng looked at Chu Li. Chu Li took the teacup from Bai Feng and took a sip. He said slowly, "They used a surprise attack. That's why we suffered such a heavy loss. They must be prepared now, so it'll be difficult for us to take revenge." That's right. Zhang Teng nodded. They'll definitely increase their vigilance and even withdraw their disciples. Are we just going to let it go? Liang Pingyuan was displeased. He could not take this lying down. Flaming Sun's sect had a bad temper due to their cultivation technique, so he could not take this lying down. Chu Li shook his head. No matter what, we can't let it go. I plan to enter the Qiu dynasty and turn them upside down. I'll let them know the consequences of angering us. You're going alone? Liang Pingyuan was stunned. Chu Li nodded slowly. I'm enough. This? Liang Pingyuan shook his head. Although you're powerful, the Qiu dynasty's 4 sects are also powerful people. Moreover, they're united, so they'll definitely come up with a way to kill us. I'm afraid. He was not optimistic about Chu Li's decision. No matter how powerful a person was, he was only one person. Although a top-notch master could fight a group of ordinary masters, Chu Li was not invincible. It might be possible if Saint Sun Mingyue went. Unfortunately, Sun Mingyue dared not go to the Qiu dynasty, or else the enlightened masters of the Qiu dynasty would attack. Zhang Tang said, "If we launch a surprise attack, it won't be too difficult to eliminate the 4 sects branches in Duanli City." That's right, let's eliminate the branches in Duanli City first. Liang Pingyuan scoffed. I'll request for a group of masters from a sect. We'll eliminate them, even if we have to attack them by force. We'll destroy the Qiu dynasty's prestige. Duanli City was the northernmost city of the Qiu dynasty. Its location and status were similar to Falling Autumn City. It was also a prosperous border town, only 100 miles away from Falling Autumn City. Zhang Ting nodded slowly. I'll request for masters from a sect too. Zhao Priest, let's do a 4 sects joint operation. What do you think? Chu Li smiled. That'd be best. I'm just afraid that your sect won't agree. I'll do my best, Zhang Tang said. Chu Li fist saluted. Then I'll wait for your good news. We'll send a message right away. Goodbye. The 2 men fist saluted and left. They could not wait any longer. The Qiu dynasty's martial arts circle in Duanli City would soon be prepared and might even send reinforcements. The sooner they acted, the easier it would be. The longer they delayed, the more reinforcements from Duanli City would arrive, and the harder it would be for them to succeed. In the early morning, Chu Li performed the Divine Void Light technique and arrived outside the Divine Light Basilica. There was no one in the basilica. When he came outside, he saw another girl in green on duty. When she saw him, she looked at him in surprise. Chu Li was very famous in the Holy Church of Light, and he was the easiest to recognize. He was considered the ugliest person in the Holy Church of Light. Even those who had never seen him before could recognize him. When Chu Li saw that the girl in green looked unfamiliar, he fist saluted. Is the saint here? The saint isn't here yet. The girl in green shook her head. Is there anything urgent that I need to report? Julie nodded. That's for the best. I'll have to trouble you, senior sister. The girl in green pursed her lips and smiled. She was a little shy and reserved. Then, she left the basilica and entered the strong wind. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared. After a while, the girl in green reappeared and curtsied. Priest Zhao, please follow me. Julie nodded and followed the young lady in green as they circled around the mountain peak. When they arrived at the other side of the mountain peak, they arrived at a simple courtyard under the morning sun. Sun Mingwei was dressed in a loose white training outfit and was cultivating. Her training clothes were loose, but the waist and the cuffs were tucked in, so it didn't look cumbersome. In this way, her waist looked especially slender, and it was hard to believe that a person with such a figure actually had a martial art skill that could suppress all the heroes in the world. You may leave. Sun Mingwei waved her hand. The girl in green looked at Chu Li in surprise. Then, she curtsied and left. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.